Good morning, night city, a day in the life. I was on my own, catching a ride with the lady. Her hair hangs down past her thighs, blue and pistol shit. Satisfies, leather jacket, zipped up tight. Big ones coming, look for lost and found. I have been bright and night city, where your appetite waits you out to sunrise.
Welcome to a new perspective on the modern day geek. And now, without further ado, please welcome your host, Leon of the New Geeks.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the New Geeks. This is kind of a special episode that I've been kind of cooking up behind the scenes. We're going to give trailer reactions to Zack Snyder's latest venture, Rebel Moon, the director's cuts that we've all been anticipating. Also, we're going to give a bit of an analysis, a bit of a hero's journey analysis, if you will, of Zack Snyder's filmography, his career, and how he's affected the fandom and the zeitgeist and cinema overall. I have a special guest today, the homie Millennial Mike. What's going on, Mike?
Hey, it's good to be here. This is my first time on the New Geeks. You started this stream not too long ago, like your own channel not too long ago. So I'm happy to be one of the first guests on there.
Yeah, man, absolutely, man. I don't know anybody. There are a few people that I would want to roll out the red carpet for when it comes to my channel. So you're definitely one of the guys that
man,
I've had on the top of the list, you know.
If my camera is on, you'd see my head swelling. That's why it's off.
Word. But yo, now real talk, like among the fandom, you're one of the guys who I've always kind of kicked around ideas with, and you've always given your authentic analysis of things, you know what I mean? Even if it's kind of biting.
Yeah.
And I don't mean biting as in biting off of somebody. Yeah, I mean, for those that don't know, I mean biting as in it's got teeth, the opinion. What were you gonna say?
I guess so. I mean, it's always biting when you're kind of imagining the person who doesn't like it as like some boogeyman, like, oh, like this is what, you know. But I mean, in reality, it might be soothing for some people to hear. Who knows?
True. Very true.
Not that my commentary is biting or soothing, you know. It might just be like mid and trash, but who knows?
It's definitely not mid. That's for damn sure. You take a lot of care in your thought process. That's what I've always admired about your thinking when it comes to entertainment in general. You're not just looking at it like throwaway things. You know what I mean?
AK, I spend too much time on Twitter. What's the topics, man? Stop doing this to me.
Let me do a little bit of housekeeping real quick while I do. Let me grab the something to play in the background while we kind of react to this trailer.
Yeah, for sure. So are you going to stream it on the video here, or do you want us to just like hit play at the same time? Or
well, I'm just going to, let me see. Well, we've already seen it. Let's just give our kind of raw reaction, our analysis of what we saw. And I'm just going to play the original trailer kind of just circling in the background.
Okay.
You go ahead and share the
If
screen
you
for the
refer to
audience.
the Red Band trailer, like the new one for the director's cut, then just when you refer to it, just give me a timestamp. That way I can kind of see what you're seeing.
Let me see real quick. But yeah, no, I mean, we've already kind of seen it. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on what you thought of the trailer in and of itself, the Red Band version, the director's cuts. What are your thoughts about the director's cuts overall? Save some for the end because we're going to circle back to the topic of and extrapolate what Rebel Moon as a franchise means going forward for cinema.
Sure. So when I first saw it, I was hyped, and I'm still hyped about the movie, the movies, the project.
Right.
But it's not just hype; it's other things. I have thoughts, I have concerns, I have questions, I have all sorts of thoughts about it. But what I would say is that we were kind of talking about this before we actually started going live. And with Zack Snyder's Justice League, Zack actually he cut those trailers. Like he cut the Hallelujah trailer, he cut the other. Well, there was also the there's a Hallelujah trailer, and then there was that one trailer that had that that logo or that crest. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Slow motion kind of like advertising kind of shot with the Hallelujah music playing over that as well.
Yes.
But so he actually was involved in a lot of the promotional material for the movie, and we know that HBO gave him money to do basically whatever he wanted to do. So I actually feel like this is a kind of a similar situation. Supposedly this situation is actually better though, because all the terms were agreed to before the project was started. So everyone went into it knowing what they were going to get out of it, and there was no uncertainties or it wasn't under the poor circumstances that happened with Justice League that all that transpired. So
right.
I would think that this trailer would also be cut by Zack, but I don't think that it was. I mean, I guess we can kind of talk more about the specifics and why we don't think that it was. But it just doesn't feel like it has, as a trailer, it doesn't feel like it has that Zack Snyder juice to it. It feels like it's just a Netflix trailer with footage from the cool movie that he's making that's coming out.
Yeah, that's interesting because I remember when we first talked about this like yesterday, and also when we were talking about it today for a bit, I kind of mirror the same kind of thoughts. The trailer itself was dope. Let me just say that right now. It was fantastic. But if we're judging it off of other trailers, it lacked a bit of epicness. It just felt like kind of a vignette of cool scenes and action. I guess because they figure we've already seen kind of what the movie's about, and I guess they're trying to show us like this is what's to come. You're gonna see gore, you're gonna see blood, you're gonna see this and that, and you're gonna see heavy metal aura. Heavy metal magazine aura is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because now naturally the Hallelujah trailer was sentimental. It was kind of meta because of the narrative of the movie itself, but also Zack's creation of the movie and what it meant to him and what it meant for the cut being released to the fandom. He was like playing on multiple different levels. This is something a little bit different. And even if we're not talking about Zack Snyder, like the best trailers do kind of tell a story, and the music
absolutely,
and the visuals really come together. So this isn't to say I'm not just like blasting it. It's good, and it's ultimately what we're going to talk about this too, but the narratives around the movie, both from outside the fandom, within the fandom. I'm more interested to talk about the narratives within the fandom because we all know what the narratives outside the fandom are. It's never changed. So it's really not interesting to talk about that at all because it hasn't ever changed. But
right.
But within the fandom, it seems to be that whatever sacrifice needs to be made to get the project it doesn't matter. Like whatever happens before we see the movie, whatever happens around the movie, whatever terms were agreed to, like nothing matters. It's all acceptable. It's even preferable as long as the movie we get is the movie that Zack wants to make. So that could just be the end of the podcast. We could say, oh yeah, like the trailer was great because it means the movie's coming out, and then just end it. But I don't know. I'm not interested in just being a hype man, you know.
Yeah, placating almost, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, that doesn't mean, I'm not excited about it. I don't honestly even know really what to say. So here, let me give everyone, I should probably level with people and give people an idea of like where I'm coming from. So I watched the first Rebel Moon, and the first one, Child of Fire, then Scar gave us the second one. So I watched the first one, and I didn't like it. I didn't hate it either. It was just kind of like a lot of action movies that I've seen where I didn't feel like a lot of the characters really I didn't empathize with a lot of the characters. I can't say they didn't develop at all. And I'm not even saying that development is always crucial, especially on an ensemble. You can have just these cool characters get together, it's iconic, and then have them do cool action. But I didn't feel like the action was cool. It all kind of just hit with a thud. Everything felt like cut right before. It just felt really weird and bad. So there wasn't a lot there for the story. The visuals were okay, but honestly, I prefer the Larry Fong era of Zack Snyder. And I didn't like TD. I didn't like Army of the Dead. And this, I think, looks a little better than that. It's more sci-fi. I prefer Zack when he's doing sci-fi. So I watched it. I didn't really care for it. I didn't watch the second one because I said, hey, I'm not going to get myself all stirred up and frustrated because I know if I don't like this, I definitely am not going to like the second one. Especially for the reasons
you didn't watch the second one?
I did not. I said I'm going to wait. So
gotcha.
And I did that because like I don't want to be upset. I don't want to be frustrated. I don't want to be critical about things that I know are going to be bad. If it were anything else, I simply wouldn't watch it. But I am interested in seeing his vision. So that is kind of where I'm coming from, just to kind of give people an idea that like.
And I'm glad you're transparent about that. Everybody in this audience already knows that I fucking loved both Rebel Moons. I do understand where you're coming from as someone who, I think not to speak for you, but you're viewing Zack's work as something that should always be elevating whatever he's touching.
Well, here's the situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of movies that are not elevated, that are not like capital C cinema, right? That are not art films. And there are also movies that I wouldn't say necessarily are bad by any quote unquote objective measure, but I just wouldn't ever watch them because I don't care about them, right? Now, I love Zack Snyder. I like almost all of his work, and I've always been at the forefront of, praising his work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and I do it because it's his work and because I think he does elevate everything he touches, and I like his style.
100%.
It's not just the mere notion that he made it, right? Like, I'm not going to look at something and say that I don't know that's made by Zack Snyder and no one is totally sure and be like, oh, that's interesting. And then someone says Zack Snyder made this, go, oh my God, this is great. Like, I actually can look at it and make like my own opinion for myself. So so basically that is to say, yes, I kind of do expect him to elevate the work. And I don't really feel like the first one was elevated. I felt like it was the corporate work that we all know that Netflix wanted to make specifically to get kind of a larger 4-quadrant audience into it. And we all agreed to those terms. So that's not even a controversial point.
Yeah. And that's where I like for me, I know where your stance is. Just for layman's terms, it's in the negative, right? That's you have a negative response to signing on the dotted line to this corporate version of his vision. For me, I look at it the opposite. I understand where you're coming from, but I'm the opposite. I'm like, man, I appreciate that he gave us this, I guess, corporate version of what he wanted to do in order to get the actual prize done.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, and I get what you're saying when you say that fans are like they're always trying to find something of a W for Zack, given the circumstances of his past. In this case, I would champion that only because I think they're kind of reverse engineering the process of not necessarily the Snyder Cut. I mean, we could say that, but they're reverse engineering what he always does, which is he releases director's cuts. That's kind of his claim to well, not even kind of, it's literally his claim to fame.
Yeah.
So I think that that's quite brilliant on their part to try to do that. And I think it's quite clever on Zack's part to participate in that.
Yeah. The thing is that to be truthful, there's not a lot that I can totally say without having seen the final work.
Right.
And I'm not totally a guy who's like, whatever you need to do to, like, the outcome always justifies the means. But there are certain circumstances where I get it. My frustration is mostly just the appearance of a lack of self-awareness and a lack of honesty and authenticity when it comes to the Netflix cuts. I don't think that, and the problem is that I have a misguided and a bias and a partial expectation from the Snyder fandom, which I deeply care about and I've been involved with for a long time, and I'm slowly growing out of it. But it's probably always going to irk me because I just feel very passionate about it. It's like I feel like it's a part of my identity. I mean, it definitely is a part of my online identity. I spent so much time with that. The podcast that I'm a part of, and the people that I've met have all been associated with that. So as far as Michael is concerned online, Michael is a Snyder Cut, guy. So yeah, when I see like the fandom be like, oh man, like this is so amazing, I cannot wait to see what the director's cut's like. It's like, I think that the difference, for instance, between Batman v Superman and the Ultimate Edition is not like that significant. I think that the difference between like Justice League and Zack Snyder's Justice League is obviously massively. I mean, it's
absolutely.
It's so I think there's a room for conversation to talk about what we're really getting here and like what it is, because like obviously I think we could talk about Justice League and say that that was a travesty, right?
100%.
And we really don't know how much of the Netflix cut like Zack Snyder was kind of phoning in,
Okay.
Or how much he was willing to kind of
So you don't think it's like, you don't think it's a situation where he's filmed the entirety of the, I guess, the alternate universe take, right? And then just kind of edited down to where because I don't think he's phoned anything in with any of the cuts. I think in the editing process, it may seem to those like such as yourself that may look at it and go, we should have got the original version, right? We should have got the director's cut in the first place. It may seem like it's phoning in when comparing the two, but if you're taking the same scenes and the same material and you're just whittling it down to where it's, palatable to general audiences.
I wish it was that simple, but we both know it isn't, because he filmed some scenes more than once to get
Oh
different
yeah.
shots. Like
I get
the
what you're
way that
saying.
he filmed, and this is also a discussion that a lot of people aren't talking about. The Netflix cut is influenced because these were literally filmed at the same time. They're a part of the same fabric. So there are things that he did in the director's cut that are going to have an influence on decision making that we see in the Netflix cut, and vice versa. Right? It's not
Right.
like he made one film and then he made a second one. It's like he had to figure out how to do it. So we really don't know what all the compromises that an individual has to make to get this to work the way that he did it. It hasn't been done like this,
But
you
don't you
know?
think that that's more optimistic though? I, I when I hear you say this, I'm like I'm excited to see what he does because I never look at cuts in a sense of, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but like a do or die attitude about it. You know, I'm very curious to see what the differences are and what they mean for the universe going forward, or universes. Who knows? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, I mean, it just all of the different situations when a director's cut was released, there was like massively different context and situations behind that. So we can't act as though it's the same situation. And people think that just because he knew about this in advance and that this was all planned out in advance, that we're gonna get the same effect. Like you know that like if like
Salute
it
to the homie Sky, by the way.
oh
Thanks for
hey
joining us.
yeah no I just see a square
Oh yeah, because it's
an
I don't know,
emoji.
for some reason that salute emoji always gets
Oh, it's the salute emoji specifically. You know,
mhm. Oh yeah.
you can translate them.
Oh, but you know what? Before we get into the weeds of Rebel Moon, because we could talk about that all day, because I wanted to kind of circle back to that
Yeah,
because I got a mental like.
I'll have to do some qualifications because, like, right now I'm definitely playing bad cop. I mean, I don't really feel like
You are.
hyping it up necessarily.
Yeah.
Although, just go on my Twitter, like I've retweeted like a ton of like, oh my god, it's the best thing. So it's not like I'm not excited about it. I just,
Right.
but yeah,
No, but that's why I wanted you on because you analyze, you have intellect, and you also aren't just going to massage and placate and be a yes man.
yeah.
You're
But we can definitely
I
talk about
appreciate
the
your
ups and the
perspective
downs. Like I want to talk about the ups too. I
for
want to talk about
sure.
the ups. I don't want to be just the mustache twirling villain.
But you are today. But no, uh, you're the Joker to my Batman. So, all right, let's get into, I guess, the meat and potatoes of this. The main reason we're here. We just want to kind of give an analysis of Zack Snyder on the heels of the upcoming Rebel Moon director's cuts being released and premiering in the Egyptian theater. And lucky fans are going to get to see that. On the heels of that, let's talk about this man's career. So I wanted to kind of view his filmography, the way he interacts with fans and everything, his career overall as sort of a hero's journey. He likes to be Campbellian with his work, right? So Zack Snyder analyzing a hero's journey. Let's go pre-Snyder cut, right?
Mm-hmm.
The days of Dawn of the Dead, George Romero and his fans seething at Zack for, you know, reinvigorating new life into the zombie franchise, right?
So you know, Dawn of the Dead is actually the only Zack Snyder film that I actually haven't seen. I've seen everyone.
Really?
I've even seen his iPhone shot Snow Steam Iron, but I haven't seen Dawn of the Dead yet. Actually, to be honest.
Dawn of the Dead was amazing to me. I mean, even before I knew it was Zack, because like I wasn't watching it like I know who Zack Snyder is. I just, watched it and I was like, this is badass, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reaction to that movie was crazy around that time period when that's kind of why I even heard about it. I heard about the reaction, everybody being upset that he was actually doing a remake, and I was like, okay. And so when I watched it, I was like, this is great. But I didn't even want to really talk about that too much. I was kind of using that as a precursor to get into 300 problems and a movie ain't one. The response from people watching 300 and what 300 meant, because that was really the movie that set Zach apart and raised his, his resume. It made him, I don't know, maybe not even a household name, but it definitely put him put his foot in the door. The movie itself,
Well, he became culturally relevant for
I was about to
sure.
say that, yeah, the movie itself became pop culture. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, um, I mean, we talked quite a bit about a lot of these things in a different kind of manner, off the stream, and
For
I have a
sure.
whole thesis about it, which includes probably this bullet point as well as several other bullet points. So I don't know, like, if I can necessarily chop my thesis up, but um, the thing is that people liked 300, and from what I understand is that while there may have been some controversy about his Dawn of the Dead, um, I don't necessarily think that it really reflected on him as a director as much, because after 300, he seemed to be like in the good graces. I don't think his real cultural relevancy as someone who's a provocateur started until Watchmen, which comes later. But people, I mean, from what I can recall, everyone seemed to be on board with 300. Like, people really enjoyed that. But what was your take on it?
I looked at it like, at the time it was such a powerfully manly movie, especially, I believe, what was it? Obviously Gladiator came before it, but I also think didn't
Troy came around that.
Troy, yeah.
Yep, yep.
So it was like it came well after some of these other movies, and studios were just like, sword and sandals, that might not be the thing anymore. And when 300 came out, I'm not gonna lie. Before it came out, when I heard about it being, developed, I was like, okay, cool, whatever. But I was also like, I don't know. We're gonna get another like Troy. Like, what are we gonna get?
Hmm.
Because I was
Had
very
you read
excited
the
about
comic
Troy.
up to that point?
Oh, Frank Miller's book.
Yeah,
Yeah, like once, only once, and it was cool. I was like, oh, cool. That's what's up. I
yeah,
was never really hyped about it,
yeah.
but I was always a fan of other things that Frank Miller did. But when 300 came out, I was like, damn, this is some of the manliest shit I've ever seen in my life, and it definitely spoke to me as someone who was always always preaching and kind of beating that drum of be a man, get up, pull up your bootstraps, kind of
Hmm.
thing. So
Yeah. No, because yeah, we were talking about this, and I totally agree. I mean, it was 2006, and it was a
yep.
different time. That was cool. It was rad. It was awesome. It was sick, bro. You know, and 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 I hadn't watched that movie. Actually, I only recently watched that movie. That was actually the last Zack Snyder movie that I watched, was actually 300. Um,
Oh, for
but
real?
yeah, I felt like I had watched it because it's so in the annals of meme history that it's just, you can't really escape all of the references and the clips and the videos and the PFPs and everything. Like, so you really kind of know what it's about. But I will say, having watched the movie, it really does come together, and it's greater than the sum of its parts. So it's definitely not something that you can just watch in clips on YouTube. It's great. But I will say, man, I really, really enjoyed it. I don't know where I place it amongst all his films. To be honest, I don't really care to try to rank all of his films so much, because I don't feel like there's a lot of value in doing that. Um, like,
Extrapolate that for a moment.
yeah, well, okay. I think that each film kind of represents an era for the director. Like, my favorite director is Denis Villeneuve, and
Oh, he's
I
dope.
think that he really brings um, a lot of great things to the table as far as his style, his sensibilities. I think that once he made Arrival, he kind of wanted to switch to something more fantastical, more big budget. He started just kind of, and then he went to 2049. Now he's doing the Dune stuff, and um, I don't like this era as much. I think it doesn't really have any lack of quality. I think it's just as legitimate as anything else. But it's just not my personal thing. It's a different era for him, and I don't think he's ever going to go back to his French films, like his little indie stuff. He's never going to do that ever again. But those, in my opinion, were his best movies. That's Polytechnic, and uh, the other one is not coming to my mind right away. But his first two French movies were like, those are my favorites. So with Zack Snyder, I feel like, I haven't really honestly analyzed to a great degree all of his eras, but I think that, trying to like just rank order like each individual movie, like what you like best. I mean, hey, you can do that for your own personal use, but I just don't really feel like a lot of value as far as like analyzing his work to just say like, oh, this was the best and this is the second best. Like he had different eras that he was in, and each era kind of represented a different phase of what we know as Zach.
Was the movies August 32nd on Earth or Maelstrom? Was it?
Oh, for Denis?
Yeah, I was looking it up.
No, it's let's see here.
Incendie. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing movie. Incredible. I watched that movie. It's a tough movie to watch, but I watched it twice and it's just as good the second time. Polytechnic, I think I watched that 2 or 3 times. Also a difficult movie to watch. Both of them are super harrowing, but they're absolutely incredible. They're long, they take their time. They're extremely well shot, well acted, and it's just capital C cinema. Like Martin would just be jumping for joy.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So during 300 era, what do you think this did for Zach in regards to?
Yeah, okay, that's something that I can dig into. So looking back at it now, like Zach is definitely known as this like bro director,
Right.
because of that. We also, as we gotten to know him, he lifts. He's just very laid back. He speaks he's not so worried about trying to come off eloquent and articulate and academic when he's speaking.
Correct.
He's just very like to the point, he's kind of crass. And he's got a very like edgy, masculine, kind of a rough around the edges vibe. But also he's full of like life and joy, and he's like
and earnest,
a man who's just living his best life. And because of that, he has this sort of like at the time, I don't think it really meant much. Like looking now, like at 2024, it means so much more because now he gets criticism of being, a meathead, musclehead, dude bro, toxically masculine kind of figure. And all of his movies, oftentimes, that's kind of a underpinning of a lot of the criticisms. Even people aren't saying this out loud. People definitely take that in consideration when they're looking at his films. It's different for someone else to have some of the themes that he has in his movies. But when Zach has it in his movies, it means something different because of who people think they know Zack Snyder to be. Yep.
Yeah. 100%.
I love this. It,
man. I think this is like it kind of personifies who he is in a way. It's just a moment in time, but it's just cool.
The mouth licking, the lip biting.
Yeah, man. And I was like, when I saw that, I was like, what made Zack Snyder a winner? Hard work, dedication to his craft, turning L's into lessons, life, and legacy. Don't just admire the man, emulate him, be inspired, forge your own path, get out there and get it,
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in regards to like all these movies, there's so much to say about what they did for him at the time, like what the narrative was at the time. I mean, the thing that I'm, I guess, most interested in talking about right now is because I think the big elephant in the room is that people don't like him. And we're always trying to attribute the seeming hatred about Zack to jealousy, malice, or stupidity or something like that. You know, we don't know. We legitimately don't know why he's treated the way that he's treated.
I have thoughts on that, and they may verge on the tinfoil hat nature, but if we're looking at the era that we live in terms of social views, political views, etc., a lot of what he puts in his films is about free will, freedom of choice, banding together when you guys may or may not agree with one another, different cultures and beliefs that don't necessarily merge when together, but they are kind of forced to get along, at least for the moment, for the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
He has a lot of themes that kind of challenge what seems to be kind of against elitism in a sense, and what elitists kind of, at least the so-called agendas that may or may
Yeah,
not
I
be.
mean,
You know what I mean?
that's I feel like that's a little nebulous, if I'm being honest. It's not like,
Sure.
because a lot of superhero movies have characters coming together to stop some threat. And I think Zack Snyder does that as well. I think he does it better. But if you want to get into the nitty gritty, like for instance, in Batman v Superman, there was a lot of themes in there about how the media was a weapon to castigate an individual who didn't deserve it, right?
Right.
Right, and the Jesse Eisenberg character, right, like this kind of modern CEO type, you know, his hatred for God, or the concept of it, because of how it reflects upon him. You know, it's not even that Superman is, you know, God within the movie. It's just that he hated that when he saw Superman, he saw an ideal that, oh, this, you know, I don't like this. This needs to be expunged, right? Now, there's a lot of different criticisms, or not criticisms, but like analyses that you can make of the movie about how that might diverge from mine. I mean, when I looked at the movie, I really enjoyed it. One of my favorite lines in the movie is, if I forgot exactly which comes first, but Jesse Eisenberg's Lex, he says, if God is all powerful, he cannot be all good. And if he's all good, he cannot be all powerful. I think he says it vice versa. I always forget which one comes first. And I love this because a lot of people, they listen to this and they think, oh, Jesse Eisenberg is cooking right now. And I thought, well, yeah, he delivered that line amazing, but he's also a obsessed villain who's fallen off the beaten path, and he's trying to kill Superman. Like, he's simply just expressing his worldview, and his worldview informs his actions.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
he believes that basically nothing can be all powerful and all good, and he's a nihilistic, you know, paranoid individual who has he had issues with his father, and those issues with his father he projects onto authority, up and up and up the ladder until you get to the most the highest ideological authority. You know, he hates anything like it. And when you think about this hatred for establishment, for authority and whatnot, as being like this cause of obsession, paranoia, nihilism, and evil, then it makes, and then you also castigate the media as being like a weapon to castigate the same kinds of themes, right? Then it's for those reasons, amongst others, that's, you know, that I think is a much more salient reason to see why his movies, especially in 2016, were very controversial, like actually controversial amongst the media type, amongst the journalist type, amongst the actual elite type, not just people coming together. Every superhero movie has that.
That's see, you're speaking from a theatrical standpoint. I'm not in disagreement with you. I'm going to add what you're saying in addition to what I'm saying, because the lead up to what I'm saying has to begin with, well, this guy may be sending messages to the masses to question the media. We can't have that. So he's already laying the groundwork for us to start thinking and looking at entertainment in a way of almost like he's sending a message, right? Whether intentional or not. Maybe he's just telling a story and he's just telling it like it is, because historically we know that the media has always manipulated the masses. Like that's history. And Zach is probably just doing what he knows best, which is utilizing his thought processes when it comes to religion and history and thrusting it into his work and elevating the material that he's utilizing, because the material that he's utilizing is pretty garbage, if we're being honest.
Yes.
Me and you've talked about comic books and how trash they are.
Form is garbage.
Yeah.
Any movie worth its salt will try to elevate it.
100%. So he's taking these quote unquote gods, the iconography of these characters, and he's trying to infuse it with what would actually occur potentially, right? If these things were real, right? So how would the media react? The media would manipulate the masses. The media would put their messaging out. They would make you, just for clicks, just for views. We see it all the time.
Just make sure that we're on the same page. So like the theme that we're talking about right now, because we kind of started, we were talking about how his movies were controversial.
Right.
And they're controversial because certain people amongst the people, or the kinds of people who dislike him, elites, critics, those types, right? They dislike Zack Snyder. You mentioned something about people coming together and things like that. Then now you're talking about how he's just kind of logically following the steps. Here are the characters, and this is what would happen. So, like, what's your thesis on it?
Well, I'm getting to that. So the point that I'm making is that because you not picking on you, but you were seemingly kind of saying, well, that those themes about coming together happen in what I'm saying is if we're just looking at DCEU, his DCEU work was laying the groundwork, in my opinion, whether intentional or not, for what we eventually ended up getting with Zack Snyder's Justice League. And I'm not saying the whole of Zack Snyder's Justice League, because we know that's interesting circumstances at best. It could have gone differently. But if we're going to treat Zack Snyder's Justice League as something that was at least in part what he was going to do, then he didn't just show desperate figures coming together to fight some elitist looking thing that looked the same as the way the MCU portrays or presents their work. If I'm being honest, and if you're even being honest,
Dark side is the devil,
100%.
If God won't do it, the devil will. Thank
you, and that's why I'm saying, I know it's a little dismissive, but no, I can't dismiss that, because literally we have a character that wants an equation that is literally subjugating the masses. It's the anti-life equation, and I should pull it up, but maybe I'll pull it up in a minute. But it's literally telling the masses, I'm going to control your life. You're going to assimilate. You're going to become whatever I want you to be. You're going to be one. You're going to be one people. Forget your beliefs. Forget your whatever. Forget it all. You're going to be under my thumb. And in ZSJL, if we're looking at the groundwork laid from Man of Steel, which was also talking about genetics, free will, and choice, nature, nurture. We go to BVS, which was, very politically driven and media driven, and what the media does to people with choices. And then you go to ZSJL and you look at the history of all of that with the Proto Justice League, where nations are coming together that don't get along, and they're like, well, shit, we got to get along to fight Satan. And then you fast forward to the future within that film, and it's the same thing. Well, we got to come together to fight Satan's uncle. So very heavy stuff. And if I'm just tinfoil hatting, if I'm an elitist and I don't want the masses, if I just want the masses to remain dumb, for lack of a better term, I'm going to give them the MCU. You're going to get this purple guy who's collecting gems, and that's basic come together, fight bad guy shit. And Zack with the things that he was doing and the messaging within that,
Yeah.
I think, just to answer your question earlier, I think that may be a reason to not let the guy's work shine. Because what are we getting in entertainment nowadays? What are we getting? We're not getting anything with a real message
Well,
of
thematic
honor and
material is
guiding.
at an all-time low. It's
Right.
mostly about spectacle and, yeah, and just it's really just movies that whose purpose is to advertise themselves and the following movies. Like you watch an entire movie to see an end credit scene to find out what characters you're going to see in the next movie, and then so on
Right.
and so forth. Like the only thing you can spoil is which characters are coming into the movie, which characters are going out of the franchise, and that's it. Like that's the only thing that people really care about.
Absolutely. Let's
Which
go
characters are going to show
to
up?
say it again.
Like which characters are going to be together? Like who's going to talk to who's going to say the line, strike the pose, that kind of thing.
Right.
Wear the suit.
Right. Yeah, 100%. It's all just bang toys together. You know
Well,
what I mean?
because when we were talking together earlier, we were kind of talking about how basically, because this is to kind of hit this from another angle. So Zack Snyder is a person who can't really be controlled. He makes work that he wants to make, and he's always been known for fighting for that right. So I think that we're seeing a situation with Zack Snyder, with Kevin Costner, with Francis Ford Coppola, where these people are saying, hey, I want to facilitate a situation where my authentic artwork is going to come to screen. And it's always been met with preemptive backlash. And I think that Zack Snyder has kind of set he's created like a precedent for doing this. And on top of that, I think he's always been kind of known as a problematic director. He presents very masculine. He writes about masculine men. A lot of his females, while they can fight and they're strong, they're very feminine in nature. They look feminine. They act feminine. They're aware of that situation.
They love their men.
Yes.
They almost depend on their men.
Yes.
And also,
he has mothers men
who call their moms, men who have sex with their women.
Yes.
The men when the chips are down and the men are like, I don't know what the F to do. And they're too, how we can be bullheaded. Mm-hmm. The women come and put their hand on our shoulder and say, babe. And then we're like, what's up? And then
they're a support. Yeah.
They're a support system. He shows the natural, honorable, traditional, way of doing things. And this is a horrible segue, but I kind of wanted to lean into who watches The Watchmen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a horrible segue.
Horrible segue. The height of 300 and what it meant for society, this masculine film that basically like it started so much, man. Like the Spartans, how many gyms do you know now that have Spartans everywhere?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when you hear this, I'm gonna play a clip real quick.
It's so iconic.
For sure. I'm gonna play a clip real quick to kind of illustrate that, and I want to see how the chat reacts.
Mm-hmm. If it is blood you seek, you're welcome to join us.
Would you bring only this handful of soldiers against Xerxes? I see I was wrong to expect Sparta's commitment to at least match our own.
Doesn't it? You, there. What is your profession?
I'm a potter. So.
And you, Arcadian, what is your profession?
Sculptor, sir.
You?
Blacksmith.
Spartans! What is your profession? You see, old friend, I brought more soldiers than you did.
What is your profession? It's just like, oh man, it's
So gangster. So he, Zach is at the height of his powers. You know, studios clamoring for the man, and what you know what's I always found interesting about Zach. He's very much a guy, like you said. He's a man's man. He's a guy's guy. He's very much in tune with bringing to life whatever he's wanted to bring to life as a child. You know, as a kid, as a teen. I'm the same way, and when I see a guy like that, I'm like, man, I would do this with Batman. I would do this with these characters.
Yeah.
And he's on his bucket list, 300, Watchmen, you know, very Frank Miller's type stuff. And for him to want to tackle the allegedly unfilmable film, right? That was always called that in Hollywood until it came across the desk of David Hayter, who, shout out to him, does the voice of Snake from Metal Gear. You know what I mean? Hold on. My bad. I gotta do something else.
But you know, on that point, so something that I've noticed lately is that there's been a desire that's been expressed by the audience and cultivated by the studios, and maybe I don't know which has come first, you know, chicken or the egg in that situation, but it's the desire for adults to relive their childhood, right? You know, some people call it nostalgia, but it's like I see a lot of movies where, especially with the superhero stuff, where it's like most of these people who are watching these new movies are full-grown adults, and the movies aren't
100%
sophisticated. They're not smart. They're not truly adult in any way. I mean, what you can do is you can make them explicit. Like you can have a Deadpool, you can have like a Harley Quinn TV show or a Velma TV show.
But they lack the sophisticated. Bro, I was talking about this the other day with, I forget who. I was on the way home from work, and I was just like, oh, I remember exactly who it was. Someone internationally, and she was just, it was fascinating because she's like, oh, I love sci-fi, I love this. She was naming different films, and we both hate musicals. I was like, oh, that's wonderful. I hate musicals. So I was like, I've always been this way though as a kid, that whatever I watch, and it's not like I was a kid saying it must be sophisticated, but whatever I watched had to have a layer of edge, maturity, and intellect. You know what I'm saying?
We're cut from the same cloth. So
yes, Batman animated series. It's a cartoon.
Well,
but
I
goodness,
wrote a whole essay on this. That really, I go through it. But go ahead. I want to add to what you're saying though.
Sure. So, you know, when I was a kid growing up, my friends would watch something and it would be, I don't even know, just garbage. And I'm good. I can't. Or I've had other friends who were like, oh man, you watched that? And I'm like, nah, bro, check this out. And they'd be like, oh shit, that shit go hard, bro. You know? And I'm like, yeah, man, like this isn't lame. Like as a child, you know, going into my teens, I was like, whatever I'm watching, you can use me as the, you know, compass. Because I'm not gonna watch anything lame. If I'm watching it, it's gonna be cool. You know what I'm saying?
There's a desire for a young person to, especially with men, they look up to their older siblings, their older classmates, their parents, and they want to be like them. They want to do the things, see the things, engage in the things that they think is adult, right? And a lot of people have, you know, especially in the I would say like in the in the 2000s, the aughts, this was oftentimes criticized as being edgy, right? People always say, oh, like it's edge for the sake of edge, dark for the sake of dark, this for the sake of this, right? It wants to be smarter or better. Like people criticize the desire to try to appeal to something that's adult, right? Oh, it's pretentious. Like pretentious basically means that you think that you are smarter or you're more valuable than you are.
That's a lot of the criticism levied against against Zack's work. Is
Yes,
that it's
I mean it's funny
pretentious.
how his movies can
It's
somehow be
dumb or
retro
pretentious.
and
Yes.
pretentious.
Right.
Like,
Right. It's pedestrian, but also smart. Like what? What are we talking about here?
or it's faux smart, it's faux intellectual.
Right.
And I think that that's been inverted as of late. It's always like, oh, you should want to turn your brain off and kind of revert to this more childish, like that's more, when you're an adult, you'll yearn for the times where you were like, this is like some kind of psychological operation because
I think so too.
yeah, as an adult, you should be attracted to the things that engage your mature sensibilities, that engage your experience as an adult, and not always trying to revert. And it's just weird that it happens. Like, and it's always, there's all these different names and labels that it's given. So, I mean, this really goes actually great into Watchmen. Like Zach said,
I was about to
my
say,
superheroes commit like war crimes or
yes.
yeah.
I was about to say, the one thing that's always labeled on Watchmen in a good way,
Mhm.
like an apologetic way, is that it was ahead of its time. What are your thoughts on that?
V for Vendetta, The Crow, like these movies came out
Yes.
around the same time or even earlier, right?
Yeah, around the same
And
time.
there's
Even
also
Constantine. Yeah.
yeah. I don't actually know if it was truly ahead of its time. I think that it came. I mean, it was definitely came right when it needed to, and
For sure.
and honestly, I think that if it came any later, it would just be all flat out rejected.
Thank you. See, okay. Because when I hear this, maybe, I don't know, someone correct me in the chat. Maybe I've even said, well, maybe yes. I think it, but I've often had this conversation just driving home, thinking about films, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know that Watchmen would be, no matter who the fuck made it, to be honest. I don't think that it would be embraced the way, and especially if Zach made it today, I don't think it would be embraced the way people think that, because Nolan said that recently, actually.
Mm-hmm.
He said that Watchmen was ahead of its time, and if it would have came out now, etc. And I'm like,
Watchmen laid the
I don't know.
groundwork for The Boys, which is funny. But The Boys is that
Yep.
sort of ironic, satirical thing. So that's kind of the grease that gets it to, that's what I don't know what the word is. That's what gets it down. That's the sugar that gets the medicine down, I guess. So you can make these commentaries on superheroes and the culture and what that kind of power does to individuals, but it's just so much easier when you're doing it in this very absurd and goofy way, whereas Watchmen couldn't be any more serious. And that's the thing that always gets people uncomfortable. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of obscenity, what kind of explicit, just, unspeakable act or thing that happens before you on the screen, as long as it's done in this goofy, absurd way, or there's some sort of like bathos chaser afterwards.
Yes, bathos, levity. As long as there's something, yeah.
Then it's fine. But when you take something completely dead serious, it's too serious. It takes itself too seriously. It thinks,
Do you think that mostly applies? That criticism mostly applies to comic book movies? I've seen that mostly applied to comic book movies.
I agree. I think that anything that has cultural significance, it applies to.
Okay,
it's less so about like just the fact that it's a comic book movie, but like the moment that it's an adaptation of something that's going to have wide appeal, then that's when you start getting in trouble for being serious. It could be PG-13. Like even the Dark Knight trilogy is too serious for movies nowadays, and that's even for a Batman movie, which I think you can still get away with a pretty serious Batman movie, but it's 3 Batman movies, all very serious, heavy thematical material, philosophy, politics, all that's in there. It's as mature as a PG-13 superhero movie can get. without going into the Joker territory, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Give me 1 second. I just wanted an excuse to do this.
There's
So
never always a good excuse.
Right. Chat. Whenever there's somebody you got to zap, just go ahead and, my mods.
We have to talk about Rorschach.
Yes. Oh, I didn't forget. I was actually about to pull up the trailer to play in the background and get your thoughts on, because you had some interesting opinions about Rorschach and how he kind of affected, or the masses kind of affected the thoughts on Rorschach. Because real quick, I'm just gonna say this: like, it's really weird because that character was never. I don't think he was ever really meant to be liked. I think he's one of those characters that it just depends on the moment.
He's Homelander before Homelander, but not even that, really. I mean,
no, I get what you're saying.
He's more nuanced than Homelander is.
Right. It's the character that, like, you shouldn't like, but he ends up being popular.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? You had some interesting ideas on Rorschach and what he meant to society back then.
Yeah. I've been calling him Rorschach all this time. Is it Rorschach?
Yeah, it's Rorschach.
Okay.
That's funny.
Okay. Well, hey, we all take an L from time to time.
Hey, for real, right? He said Rorschach.
Yeah. So what I've noticed is, as far as like his actual themes within the movie, I can't really say that I've analyzed it to the point where I feel just really nimble and comfortable, like just, breaking down his character and going to all the nitty gritty of it. But what I can say is that, and we were kind of talking about this before, he's very popular amongst, from what I've noticed, conservative, right wing kind of people online and in real life. Like, he's kind of like the Spartans are the same way. Leonidas is the way. What else was I gonna mention? There was one other person I was gonna mention, but even like Homelander is that way. Like, people unironically like him, and then after the content comes out, people are like, no, it's not supposed to, you're not supposed to like him like that. And right. I think that whether that was like intentional or whether you should like him or what that says about you or whatever, like, this is kind of another reason why I think people found Zack Snyder to be dangerous, because he takes all of his characters seriously.
Right.
Like, the reason why people like Rorschach is because they weren't explicitly told they weren't supposed to. And honestly, when you're watching something, like, it's okay to like a character as a character because they're just a character. Like,
I get what you're saying. Like, he didn't go out of his way to explain to the audience by making by somehow rewriting the character as like, oh, he's obviously not the one to like. Before we continue, though, there is a call coming through. Just a moment. Yo, what up?
Oh,
got the homie Sky in the
What's going on, y'all? Shouts out to the chat. Shouts out to the homie Leon, and also shouts out to Millennial Mike. Thank you for being here, having this conversation with the homie bro.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been loving your guys' discussions online. I've been watching those more recently. Your last few streams have been pretty fire, so I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, man. Much appreciated, man. Yeah, we've been talking here and there, me and Mike, about doing a show of this nature that's kind of, because Mike isn't your typical like Zack Snyder fan. Like, he loves to dissect.
This guy's nodding.
So I was like, oh yeah.
He's nodding hard like he knows something.
I'm like, you know what? I'm like, nah, but I fucking dig it because like
Yeah,
I dig the
I love the discourse personally.
yeah for sure because like my theme, all right, the other underlying, so many underlying themes. The underlying theme I've already told Mike is, you know, you have to challenge your gods, right? Zach himself said this.
Absolutely.
So it's like, you know, I love that Mike is one of the ones, as well as myself, and obviously you too, Sky. But Mike is like, yeah, I'll challenge it all. You know, I dig it with authenticity. He's not doing it to like, you know,
I'm not rage baiting.
right,
I'm not, and I genuinely like Zack Snyder's work, and I've always just been mostly praised and whatnot. But lately, I think the whole Rebel Moon thing, it just a lot of things, a lot of ideas come up. I mean, we could talk about it more, you know, at your beckoning. But yeah, it's brought up a lot of questions about, are the things that we're talking about online truly authentic, or are we just saying it because we're just following the agenda, you know?
right, absolutely. So, oh, finish your thoughts on Rorschach though, because like when we were talking about this before, like off camera a couple of days ago or yesterday, um, I was like really, I was kind of taken aback in a good way because you're
Yeah,
right.
well,
You kind of
Rorschach
you
is,
took me back to that time frame, that time zone.
yeah. Yeah, well, Rorschach he's a problematic character, right? And I mean, the movie is a very problematic movie, and Zack Snyder has already kind of created a just a propensity to be a provocateur. Like, he's actually edgy. A lot of times nowadays, and this is a word that we talked about, you know, off camera. There's a lot of safe, edgy content out there. Like Deadpool is like the absolute like he's nothing to the precipice. He's like he's the zenith of safe, edgy.
Yep.
Like for instance, like you see like the that popcorn bull, right? Like imagine if that was X-23, you know,
right.
or the butt controller, you know, thing. Like it's just, you know, that's the kind of stuff that we get when you're trying to be edgy, because it's the only thing you can get. It's studio culturally approved, you know, edge.
Absolutely.
But Zach actually, he's actually quite transgressive.
I want to hear both you guys' thoughts on. Well, first, do you want to respond to that or add anything to that,
Hey,
Sky? Number one, and number two, I want to hear you guys' thoughts on how people like to attach Zach's alleged ideas, his ideology, onto his movies. Like, let's say, for instance, if Rorschach is a quote unquote right wing representative or what have you, like all of a sudden Zach has to be right or left or center, or they're trying to define Zach based on his movies. So I guess just pick up on that, I guess, Sky.
Yeah, I think that what Mike was saying was pretty spot on about Zach's work actually being edgy, and us having a lot of content nowadays, or films or what have you, that try to toe that line. And I think that yeah, he was spot on about the Deadpool thing. Yeah, I didn't really have much to push back on that. That was actually a fucking solid point, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, we can talk about, look, just bring me in when we talk about Rebel Moon, bro. Because that's where that's where the crux of my problems was with what Mike was saying before I got on this stream, bro.
Oh, okay,
I was in the car, seething. Let me get to the house, bro.
Okay,
right,
well,
for sure.
I have I'm pretty good with verbal fisticuffs, so we'll have a little spat.
I got you. Nah, I just had to push back on certain stuff, right? just a little bit, right? One was the notion that we didn't
Wait.
know.
Not to skip ahead. I don't want to cut you off, but let's save it. Let's save that because we're gonna get to the next topic. As a matter of fact, because I think we've kind of touched on Watchmen. No, but I kind of wanted to get into BVS versus the manufactured zeitgeist.
Well, yeah. So just to kind of give everyone kind of a peek behind the scenes, basically what we were talking about, I feel like this is a good place to kind of bring the thesis together, because this is what I've been thinking about this for a long time. And what I really wanted to get through on this podcast, if I can get through anything, I want to lay it on the table. I'm not going to like try to be fuzzy about it. Zack Snyder is a cultural enemy, right? And he's a political enemy, he's a cultural enemy, he's an ideological enemy to the critic, journalist, studio hegemony, right? And the reason is simply just because he can't be controlled, and there are things in his movies that attract and display ideas that people just don't want to see. Now, sometimes there's a lot of his fans will try to apologize, or they'll try to reframe certain things. But the truth is, a lot of people just like his stuff because it's cool, it's sick, it's awesome, bro. You know, we talked about this before. And when Batman v Superman came out in 2016, there were articles, and there are still articles, like how this is a Trumpian era superhero movie, you know, and how it kind of like represents the I don't even know, the problematic bad what were they trying to, the xenophobia or something like that. They were trying to like say how it was problematic in some kind of way. When really it just criticized, and we talked about this earlier in this same stream, it just criticized the media viciously. Like, Superman is good. He's an individual who is trying to stand up for what is right, and he gets castigated because it doesn't fit the narrative. And you have this nihilistic, atheist, you know, paranoid, actually xenophobic, you know, CEO guy trying to kill him. And that just wasn't a narrative that flew. And instead they took the very vapid, very empty Civil War. They try to frame that, because that was the Serpent Society. Remember, they changed it to make it a BVS clone, so that way they would have something to
100%.
like, yeah. So it's that's the thing. So whenever I look at Zack Snyder's work, I look at it as that.
Are you, quick question, because I know the answer for Sky, but Mike, are you one of the ones like myself who believe that a large portion of his ideas were given to the MCU and Disney in order to, possibly create Civil War? Because I'll just say this: the Russos said before the movie actually came out, while things were still in development, that they were inspired by Batman vs Superman. And forever, I was always like, how can you be inspired by a movie that hasn't come out yet?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then you look at how things got changed with Civil War behind the scenes, and you see the very surface level, the surface level comparisons, right? What were we going to say?
Yeah, I mean, they always had the people over at Marvel and Disney like on speed dial. It's obvious. They always did. And the moment that Zack Snyder gets ousted from Justice League, Joss Whedon, I mean, he shouldn't have even been on the list. He shouldn't have even been on the list. And in the formative years of the DC franchise, bringing that kind, even from a PR standpoint, like, there must have been a director. Like, nowadays, they're just hiring any old person to direct these movies. So you're going to tell me that you're going to hire the Avengers guy? Like, you couldn't have just hired some indie guy and then had it be like a studio mandated movie. But like, it was a PR nightmare, not to mention an artistic one. So yeah, they always had them on speed dial. Jeff Johns was always schmoozing with the Disney guys, and constantly, even still, they're constantly trying to play second fiddle to Disney, even today. And it's obvious that this isn't random. So I don't know to what degree, but I mean, is it stupidity or is it malice? You know, I'm tired of attributing what can be attributed to malice to stupidity. I think it's malice. There.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Sky?
Yeah, I think that when you look back at 2016, man, especially in hindsight, there was a lot of things that was kind of the precursor to things that we see now. I think after Sucker Punch came out, there was clearly something that Zack was doing with his films or saying or whatever. But his relationships with the studios and with the media all changed after that film came out. And so when Man of Steel dropped, you were already having lots of criticisms that I felt were, you know, kind of weird, like with the whole destruction in the third act angle, where we had been seeing cities getting destroyed in all of the Marvel movies. Every third act, you know, the world is at risk. And its city is getting blown up, but yet when Man of Steel did it, it was all of a sudden some kind of problem, right? So a whole lot of these things kind of were already happening, right? Like before we even got to the Justice League. And that is one of the reasons why I've always felt that this has been like, it's had to have been something deeper. It's had to have, in my opinion, it doesn't make any sense otherwise because it goes back too far. And Zack was a media. Now, look, I am also not one to act like the media and the studios can't be fickle, right? They can love you one moment and hate you the next. But at the same time, ever since Sucker Punch came out, there's clearly been something going on. Where
that's also another movie that was very transgressive. Like you can't release Sucker Punch today. That can't happen.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think that is there's a few movies that I don't think that you could release today, and some I don't even think that people kind of realize. But I will touch on that when we get back to the Rebel Moon point. But yeah, like there's been just and how can I word this properly? I think that when you look at the way that Zack's films have been treated, and not only by just your regular old critic, right, but just by what we see on is social media, right? We can all recall that campaign that was trying to slander BVS way before the movie even came out. It was already bots and all that stuff out.
The BVS wars,
right? Before that film even came out. So I think that when you have these multi-billion-dollar companies and they're jockeying for position in multiple ways in terms of like not only financials and box office wise, but also like getting certain narratives out there. I think it's very clear that they don't want certain narratives out there.
What narratives?
All right, I'm gonna have to bring this up now because you kind of forced me to. Like, I'll say this, right? Because we were talking earlier about y'all were talking earlier about the themes of like coming together, especially putting your differences to the side, and no matter your race, creed, color, religion, background, whatever, right? I think that when you are living in a time where maybe some of those things you might not want in the zeitgeist at that time, right? And I'll give you a perfect example. Let's say that, I don't know, you're planning on attempting to assassinate somebody, right? I don't think that Oliver Stone would have been able to make JFK right now, right? Like, I think when you look at like even Francis Ford Coppola with his new movie, Megalopolis, right? Why wouldn't nobody fund that movie, right? The studios have been burning money on all types of stuff that we know is gonna fail, right? But you look at that, and he couldn't get $100 million for that film, right? And when you look at the synopsis, I think maybe you may understand why a film like that could potentially like not be wanted in the zeitgeist around this time. I think that because look, even when you look at the some of the minor differences between ZSJL and Justice League, right, with the Age of Heroes scene, what did they take out? Those scenes was virtually identical, except in Justice League they took out all the people of color, right? It was some Asians in there, it was some Africans in there. They were mysteriously missing from Justice League, right? And it was just all white people. Now, clearly, because that wouldn't have added much to the runtime. I think it was even like around the same, like 2-3 seconds. But why double back to make sure that you cut that out? And I think that those unspoken visual representations of people like actually coming together instead of right. I mean, what did Steppenwolf say, right? He said their free will must be stripped from them and given one glorious belief, right? It was literally fighting the devil.
I have a question for you. I have a question for you.
Absolutely.
Do you think it's just the theme, or do you think that it's who gets to say it? Because this is the thing, right? I mean, I think that Disney, whether it be Star Wars, whether it be Marvel, they all put those kinds of things on the screen. If we're just, because basically what you're alluding to is representation, right? Different races, ethnicities, people, male, female, whatever, right? On the screen at the same time. And then you can have someone say like, we need to get together or whatever. I mean, that is a theme, but it's not, I don't really feel like that. I don't feel like that's a theme that's completely missing from big franchise movies.
Okay.
Real quick. My fault. No, you go ahead and answer. He was talking to you anyway, and then I'll rebuttal as well.
Because look, I don't think it's just a theme, and I'll give you an example, right? The way that I've always separated the DCEU and everything that is not only Zack and all them were doing, right, was you could kind of boil it down to Captain Marvel versus Wonder Woman, right? Both of those films had a moment in them, right, where the female heroine has to tell her male counterpart or whatever that they're not going to listen to them and that they're going to make their own choice in what they're going to do, right? That was the no man's land scene in Wonder Woman and the whole montage thing in Captain Marvel. In Wonder Woman, right, which was celebrated, by the way, even though it still had some of these darker themes in them that Zack was kind of getting torched for. Wonder Woman had a scene where you actually understood, like I, as a man, could understand where the Chris Pine character was coming from, him playing Steve Trevor, right? He felt as if, hey, this is like he was helping. We don't have time to stop and help these people because what we're doing is helping too. And she just couldn't see or understand what his vision was, right, in that moment from where he is sitting, right? Mm-hmm. So when she makes her choice to not listen to him, to me, it resonates much, much more and much more purely rather than when you juxtapose that to what happened in Captain Marvel, where she just had a bunch of guys telling her that she couldn't do something because she was a woman. And especially in some of them situations where I've actually been there with me being in the military, guys typically don't talk like that to women, right? So I don't feel that scene resonated with people. So it's about how these things resonate with people.
Or how they might resonate with people.
Yeah, I've heard multiple people tell me that not just any film, but Zack Snyder's Justice League in particular have saved people's lives. It was like, yo, I was about to do something crazy, you know, like, and I've had multiple people tell me that. So when these themes are being explored by a director of his caliber, I think that's where things can become problematic if you don't want some of these things kind of out there with the people.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I haven't thought about it from that way. Basically kind of what me and Leon were talking about was, you know, Zack has a fandom. So the kinds of criticisms people make about Zack, there are a lot of people in his fandom that like him unapologetically for that, but they don't talk about it as much, right? His films are cool. Absolutely. His films are masculine. His films are, they have a certain grit, certain edge to them. They're realistic. They, some of them are dark, and they point out certain kinds of negative behaviors of elite and of authority and things like that, while also having a deep understanding of and love for humanity and love for the past, mythos, legend, what came before, tradition, and a lot of religious and spiritual themes and things like that. So I think that's kind of the direction I was coming from. And I think that people can like his movies in spite of that. Like, they might not like the traditional elements, the masculine elements of this or that. They might try to reconcile it or to, media literacy. Oh, it's, he's actually criticizing that, or he's actually saying it's bad or something like that. But in truth, there are a whole swarm of people who throughout the eras of Snyder who liked his movies unapologetically for that reason. And the media doesn't care whether he's doing it on purpose, whether he means it, it's a criticism or whatever. They just care that his fans like him for that and that he's a negative force, quote unquote. And the whole coming together thing is interesting. I always feel like this is something that's done in a lot of movies very cynically, and representation and things like that has always been done very cynically. But it's always being done. So I've never really thought like, oh, someone who actually just does a good job making a movie with those same themes in it, oh, now they're a threat. I don't think that the media is thinking on that level personally.
Sorry, I just wanted to say this. Here's the thing though, like, the only reason I would give pushback on the latter of what you just said is that historically the arm of any sort of power has been the media and controlling of said media and entertainment. So that's why I say I don't ever throw out the possibility that media is being controlled to manipulate the masses, and entertainment as well as being controlled to manipulate. I never tossed that idea out. You know what I mean?
I never said it wasn't. They definitely are 100%. Yeah. Like, that's what BVS was all about.
Right.
Let me just pose this question. Because in my opinion, the mainstream media seems to be pretty like anti-religion, right?
Yes.
For the most
100%.
part. So even with Zack Snyder turning Superman into Jesus, right? Like, that in and of itself can give the arm of the media that is already not trying to push these things. I mean, look, like in fucking Man of Steel, I mean, he literally did the Christ pose as he was leaving the ship, right? Like, so and then
Death,
ZSJL,
death
the
and
birth and
rebirth.
resurrection.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, the whole thing. So I just think that there's that
I actually think
all
I
of
have
these
that
things
clip.
kind of all
Continue.
of
I'll
these
pull it up in a
things.
second.
All of these things, in my opinion, kind of coalesce as to like why, because like in real life, I don't get these kind of responses, right? And I was going to bring that up as well with is the Rebel Moon point. Like I was in the hospital and I was talking to a random nurse and she was exclaiming to me how much she loved that fucking movie and she was putting it on par with Dune, right?
Which movie?
Rebel Moon,
the Netflix cut.
Yeah, and and she was sitting like, well, I won't go into spoilers because I heard that you didn't see part 2, but she was she was sharing with me how she cried, whatever, blah blah blah. Like my mom cried. You know what I'm saying? So like, these things, I think, when you have somebody that is executing on all of these levels and they're known for like putting certain imagery in films, I think that all of these things put together are why there may be some pushback against people or the media trying to allow people to enjoy these movies, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that as well. I don't think it's necessarily all or one. I think that what you guys are saying is true. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that we touched on, and in order for me to like, I guess, be comprehensive about it, I'd have to like write an essay and kind of put a thesis together and basically say like, here are all the points. This is my conclusion. But basically, what like you kind of mentioned, but what I've been trying to get across is that there are themes in his movies that are just not culturally safe nowadays, and whether that be what you were talking about or what I was talking about or a mixture of those things.
No, yeah, we're definitely in agreement on that.
Yeah.
Let me play this clip real quick.
I mean, it's birth, deaths, and resurrection really is what the first 3 movies are, In the end, they're Superman stories. I think the people get sidetracked by Batman a little bit. The idea that we killed Superman was because I needed to resurrect him. I needed him to sacrifice one more thing for humanity, and that was himself. It wasn't just killing Zod this time, right? It was like the stakes got higher. And I think that in his death and resurrection, he goes almost full circle to like being kind of what I would consider is like the purest form of Superman. He's on his way to that, right? Because his battle with Darkseid was going to be the quintessential DC battle, of all time, because Superman v Darkseid is kind of that's it. I don't know what else you're going to do after that. We're like, I'll quit. We talked about briefly the whiteboards that we had put up in Dallas at the gallery at the release of Justice League. You can look them up online. I think they exist somewhere. But anyway, those whiteboards, they kind of map the story of where we were going to go with the other 2 movies that were going to come after Justice League. At his peak, he was going to have to succumb to the anti-life, be destroyed, turn the clock back, and then get his chance for for this battle against Darkseid that would, if you will, sort of finish his like trilogy of like becoming this guardian of the planet and sort of return him to his humanity. That was our hope.
Yeah, facts.
Yeah, man. What was to be, what was to come. So, post Snyder Cut era. So we delved into the #release the Snyder Cut. Fan support of Zack Snyder's Justice League. So Mike had an interesting sort of standpoint or POV on the topic of how Zack interacts with fans, etc., things of that nature. But if you guys can take us back to where you guys were kind of when all this was taking place, the release of Snyder Cut era and the fan support.
Yeah. Man, I mean, I was on Twitter. I shouldn't have been on Twitter as much as I was. I should have touched grass and just But I was on Twitter. I was pushing the agenda, all that. It's a great movie. It's one of the best superhero movies easily of all time. It's probably the most ambitious actually superhero movie of all time. And I think that for all of its good things, I also kind of feel like it was kind of a victory lap in such a way, a victory lap in the same way that like Endgame was. Like half of the joyous nature of it, the half of the celebration was the movie itself, how amazing it was, and the other half was the fact that it was happening at all, right? And looking back at the movie, it's probably my least favorite of the three superhero or Superman trilogy movies, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. But they're all completely different movies, and I appreciate them in their own ways. And that isn't like a slam against the movie, but I can see a lot of compromises that were made in that movie, and because he made the movie thinking that it might be the last one that he gets to make, so he added things that he wouldn't have even done if he was releasing it just as it, theatrically as it was, if all that stuff hadn't gone down. So, it's there's both, there's some negative points, there's some critical points that you can bring out, but it's a fantastic movie. One thing that I remarked when we were talking about it behind the scenes was that as much as I like the movie and I think it's a great film and it's like definitely cinematic, it is in fact too long for me to just put on at any time. Like I can't. It's That's too long, for me, to watch just like on a whim, and really whenever I'm watching
that shit on
sequels, right, I don't like to watch them just on their own. Like I have to watch the other ones in the beginning. I can watch like an origin story anytime. I just can't watch the third movie on its own, just randomly. That's just me.
Yeah, I was waiting for that. I was like, I can't wait to hit this.
I'm pretty sure like that's what I thought too. I was like, wasn't no way that Leon wasn't waiting at the ready to use that shit on somebody.
I was like, oh, he's about to say it. He's about to say the thing.
Yeah, it's just, it is long. Like if people don't like Zack Snyder, let's just say they're a normie, right? Let's say they don't hate or love Zack Snyder. They're going to definitely consider the 4-hour runtime. Like to think that people, just average everyday Joes, aren't going to consider that is insane. Like you have to be
You know what? I do. I always end up being the asshole when it comes to that because I was talking to somebody a few months ago and she was like, yeah, like I heard about it and I heard it was great, but it's too long. That's 4 hours. And I was like, you're the same one that watches Love Island. Get the fuck, get out of here. Get all the way out of here. You will binge Love Island. No,
the series versus film debate is a little, I mean, not you personally, but it is disingenuous because it's about the pacing. It's about the pacing. Commitment to watch a long movie than it is to watch a bunch of smaller episodes. And like, come on, we know
I think that's mental gymnastics, though, if you think about it. Because the way, no, seriously, like I can watch something in 4 hours. If it's taking too long, I just pause it and I'll just return to this later. I think it's the culture in which we consume entertainment. That's all it is, really.
I mean, there's a lot of people, myself,
y'all gonna watch the whole season of Stranger Things, bro. Stranger Things is about twice as long as CSJL, bro.
Well, have you ever watched a long movie? Like, for instance, Insan D, right? It's very slow paced. I think it's close to 3 hours, right? And when you're watching it, there's times where, especially when it's your first time or you don't really know where the beats are, where it gets a little exhausting because of the way that it's paced. And you're trying to, but once you've seen them the first time, it makes it a little easier. because you kind of anticipate, like, you know where you are in the midst of the movie. But with a TV show, like, you know, you're locked in for anywhere, if it's like an anime, or if it's like a mini series or whatever, anywhere from like 20 minutes to an hour at most. You're locked in. You're going to have an arc that begins. It's going to get you to the peak, and then it's going to put you on a cliffhanger or something like that to get you into the next episode. And then at that junction, you can make a decision if you want to continue or if you want to stop. And then you just keep going, riding that roller coaster, right? As opposed to watching a 4-hour movie. It's different. So don't, like, it's different.
It was broken into parts too, though.
Right.
Like,
that's the thing. Like,
it absolutely was.
Yeah, it was broke. It literally was broken down like a series. That's why I'm like, I understand. I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong or right, or I get it, and I'm totally on the side of understanding that people, they respond differently from a movie to a show, and their brain is going to do what it does. Like, I'm gonna not watch that because it's too long. But I get all that. I'm just saying, for me personally, I'm like, I don't fucking see the difference, because I just look at entertainment as it's all kind of, it's entertainment, and I don't do the normal typical cultural response to entertainment. I just kind of view things and look at how much time I got, and if I can watch it, I can watch it. If I can't, I can't. Like, I watched Once Upon a Time in America.
We're all getting there, though. We're all getting there. See, the part of the contentification of media is to blur the lines between series and movie. Like, it's just a video, and it could be shorter or longer. But the reason, if you read Martin Scorsese's op-eds about how film and TV are different, they're not, in cinema are different.
They really are.
They really are. Exactly. So that includes the idea that you're committing to this like fully this full vision. Also, a lot of TV series, like, you watch a whole season and it's not over. Like, it's never really over until.
That's my point. I don't necessarily. It's the mindset that you have when you're watching it. I don't even think it's the pacing. I just think it's literally the feeling you get when you're like, I'm about to watch a TV show.
But TV is made with that idea in mind. Like, that is baked into what TV is. It's not just the way that you approach it.
Would you say that it's the same for streaming TV series, though? Because I think it's different. I think TV shows, as we know them traditionally with commercial breaks, are paced more so than what you're saying. Streaming something on like Netflix as a series, I don't think it's the same. I think it's a little different. But
okay.
Not to get lost in the weeds on that.
We'll have to talk about it later. Well, we'll talk about the DMs.
Word. I did want to. Yeah, for sure. I did want to go into, because we've talked about the Snyder Cut, and did you get your thoughts in on the release of Snyder Cut, Sky?
Hey, I'm sorry.
You got some news, didn't you?
I did, bro, and it's. Yo, hey, don't mind me, y'all. I'll come back. ZSJL is the greatest, y'all. I'll be back. I can't get my fucking thoughts together. I'm about to put it in the fucking back chat, bro.
All right, for sure. 100%. I was gonna segue into still keeping up on track with the Snyder Cut the community, and the way the fans interact with Zack, the way Zack interacts with the fans. Zack Snyder, the rebellious provocateur. I know you had some interesting thoughts on that when it came to his going on certain platforms, his response to certain platforms and certain fans, and how certain fans are apologetic towards him, and how he was kind of dismissive of some and others.
Sky?
Wait, hold up. Let me just say this, because I gotta go in a second, and I want to let these gentlemen cook. Hey, you just saw that, right? You just saw that, right? Okay, cool,
I'm even typing the words, yo.
Look,
I can't say shit.
Look,
you got a dip?
Go. Yes. Much love to y'all. Thank you for having me on the stream, bro. Much love to Millennial Mike for coming on the podcast and talking with the homie.
Yeah,
to the Lions Den and having these conversations, the discourse is needed, people. Like, it's needed. We need to have these conversations, because that's the only way that you get to the truth. which is that
Agreed.
ZSJL is the GOAT. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, right? No, I'm just joking. Hey, look, y'all have a wonderful evening. Shouts out to Millennial Mike. We got to talk again sometime, bro. It was a pleasure, and the thanks to the homie Leon for bringing me on. And you go ahead and enjoy that news, bro.
Man,
For sure.
for sure, man. I got to keep that close to the vest, man.
Yeah.
What?
hey, yeah.
I'm
just
seeing it,
saw
people.
that
It's
shit.
cool. It's good stuff.
That's crazy, man.
Hey, look, y'all have a nice evening, and I will catch you guys next time.
Yes,
Peace.
sir. Peace out.
Mm.
Wow.
And before the Rebel Moon talk too, man, he can catch the on demand video, the VOD.
right. Oh man, that's crazy.
But yeah, but did you want to talk? Zack Snyder, rebellious provocateur. Yeah, I mean, throughout all these discussions, I've been kind of piecing together my thesis that he really is trying to provoke, and he is trying to, I think, combine themes and elements that we recognize, but give it in a presentation that's quite transgressive, and
Right.
I think that's always, obviously created a lot of backlash, naturally, and that even goes into the whole Rebel Moon thing. I think with the new director's cut, I think that he's kind of trying to lean back into that a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. It's the thing of, and it's great marketing. I mean, because at the end of the day, Zach he's very clever, and he knows that he's kind of created a brand where he can stoke the fires of the fandom, and voila, that's quite brilliant. You know what I mean? And that same sort of rebellious nature that seemingly helped to usher in and bring forth the Snyder cut,
Mm-hmm.
we'll have that same energy for Rebel Moon, seemingly, right?
Yeah. I like the fact that we're getting this kind of space epic that is not trying to. It comes in the past. Like, it gives you all of the things that you want from a space epic. It gives you the interesting, characters and world building, and just the exciting novelty of everything that entails like a space epic, right? But it also gives it to you in a form that feels a lot more mature, a lot more adult, a lot more. It's just different than anything that we've ever seen, because we're so used to Star Wars or Star Wars clones, like things that are like Star Wars, and
Right.
I think that whenever Zack Snyder graces his his style and his sensibilities onto something, like I always feel like he's trying to elevate something. In this case, it's obviously like he brought this originally as a Star Wars script. So that's naturally going to get a lot of people's ears perked. It's going to get a lot of people talking and, oh, is this a Star Wars clone? Is it not? Like, so it's an interesting discussion to have. I'm not even sure what my opinion on it is yet.
I think that's smart. I love that he was very open and transparent about how many studios kind of turned it down, because I think that also plays into his career.
Artist.
Yeah. Yes. He's the guy. He knows his brand. His brand is the guy who studios are constantly trying to.
They don't want you to see this.
They don't. Right.
Yeah.
Whatever that means, right? And so then the fandom or others kind of pour in their thoughts, their meaning behind. They don't want you to see this, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's quite brilliant, and I would do it. I've heard people use words like, I've even heard people that were kind of quote unquote leaders in the fandom, oh, he's manipulating us for marketing, and I'm like,
Mm.
is that a bad thing? Like manipulation, that word is thrown around like it's a negative. If I take clay and build it into a statue, I've just manipulated clay and turned it into a statue. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I just think that it's odd to think that a man who is trying to push his art via the vehicle of whatever, a studio, a streaming platform, whatever, like,
Yeah.
do whatever you got to do as long as you're not.
Well, I think that people feel entitled to a certain amount of like transparency from him, as if it's an interesting situation, because Zack Snyder is one of the few directors who is his own brand.
Yeah,
and
100%.
Even auteurs in the field who people go to see their movies because they're making it, they don't have like the signature that Zack Snyder has.
Right.
It's not quite the same thing. And even now he's trying to make like these franchises, right? And these franchises are very, like, he's trying to create like this IP franchise environment, but instead of it being studio driven, it's director driven, and he's the one who's calling the shots. And that's kind of what we were hoping to get with the DC stuff, at least up until he finished his work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now he's trying to do it on his own, and a lot of people are very appropriately labeling this the Snyder verse, right?
Mm-hmm. Can you just real quick give me just a moment? I need to step aside just a second.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Mm-hmm.
Before we begin, remember, when you enter the lair, show some decorum. Hit the like, share, and subscribe to the New Geeks. Before
All right, thank you for your patience. I actually got that whole standby thing from Hold My DualShock, that idea to just, if you got something to do, just put it on standby. I like that. Anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you for your patience.
No problem, man.
But as you were saying.
Yeah, what were we saying? We were talking about Rebel Moon, him being a provocateur, marketing, fandom. Yeah, so I don't know. There's a lot of entitlement from the fandom, and the reason for that is because there's this like, so whenever there's a problem with a franchise or a studio, everyone's like fighting over like who's to blame. Is it this executive? Is it the director who they have on this particular project? Is it the writer? Is it this or that? You know, who's to blame for the direction this is going, or how it's being marketed or whatever. But with Zack Snyder, he is the brand. He is the entire thing. So people who are very entitled are going to be like, I don't like the way that he's marketing this. He's not treating us the way that we should be treated. And the more of a fan base that he collects, that he creates, especially if he keeps on making like sequels and broadening out into whole franchises, you're gonna have the same kind of situation, like, oh, the lore of this and the lore of that, or oh, this character was portrayed in this way and that way, and oh, like all that's eventually gonna happen, if it goes on long enough. So I'm not really surprised. I don't necessarily approve. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, no, not at all. What type of fan do you think that he is garnering nowadays? Because I think from what it looks like, we're not seeing the same type of fan even in the forefront of, like, let's say streaming, for example, when it comes to podcasting, when it comes to even having discussions about him. We used to see it was almost like a prototype of a fan. We talked about it behind the scenes. I'm not going to name the names, but
Yeah, what name?
Like they have crowns, or allegedly have crowns, and
you could DM it to me.
Yeah, hold on. Let me. I'll.
Yeah. No. Don't worry about it. You can do it later. But okay, so we're talking about Zack Snyder's fan base and what kind of fan base is he creating?
Like the opposite of that. You know what I mean? Like, I
think
there's an opportunity to expand to that, and maybe there's, like, I think that kind of fan is already kind of there, has always been there and never really left, and they were kind of like not necessarily pushed to the side or pushed down, but like they were made to be less vocal. You know what I mean?
Well, what do you think about that?
I think that it's like we were saying earlier, his work has always garnered the type of audience that I think actually exists more in mass than the opposite. I think that.
What's that kind of audience?
The conservative, traditional, more
masculine,
100%. That the more, hair on your chest, shot of whiskey, grab a girl at night and whisk her to her home, make passionate love to her, and she tells all her friends about it kind of guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's always kind of.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. So what you're saying is that there has been an effort lately to kind of garner that fan base. I would say, because we were talking about behind the scenes, the geeks and gamers situation. Right. And the disavowing of them kind of in the middle of the podcast and whatnot, and basically how we believe that they were right. They were in the right. And that
right.
That Zack Snyder maybe didn't make the decision, because he was like, hey, go on this podcast this time. Like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then
he made it in haste.
Yeah. So this has created like a paradigm where it just added to all the narratives. I mean, we've been talking about it kind of throughout this strain, but it's interesting because what this has done is he could have just leaned into that, but because the people who like Zack Snyder are always gonna like him. Like he's not gonna scare anyone away. Like his fans are always gonna reconcile whatever he makes. They're always gonna say this is great and we support it and we're gonna do whatever we have to do to support it. Him going on a Geeks Gamer stream is not going to hurt his current fan base, but I think that they were definitely trying to, to kind of curtail his image, the optics and things like that. And we were talking about how basically, this has created hatred from more directions than I mean, this is the reason why like the narrative is always changing. It's because of things like that. And I think in that particular situation, he could have handled that a little bit, more courteously, especially since he had already gotten into the situation where he was on the podcast, and it just, it's really a shame. And the thing is that those like the whole Geeks and Gamers and all the tangential podcasts and streams and YouTube channels or whatever, I'm not really a big fan of their criticism. I don't think that the criticism is very good. I don't think it's very rigorous. I think that it's just very kind of lowbrow and
criticism of them, or their criticisms of
Zack and of just movies in general. Like
right. Me too. I think that they're, if I'm being honest, they're kind of Neanderthalish.
Yes.
And they remind me of the, if we're gonna say, like, if we're gonna use a movie as an analogy, they remind me of like lowbrow MCU shit, even though their platform literally itself, you know what I'm saying, reminds me of that.
Yeah, well, they basically want to return movies back to like the 2019 MCU. Basically, like they literally thought that the entire MCU up till 29 was literally like capital C cinema. And they thought that after that it went woke, and then it was like, oh, it's garbage. And the thing is that I've hated the MCU and Disney before this, you know?
Right, well before.
Yes,
it
well
allegedly
before
became woke.
exactly, right. So like in my mind, I think that they're useful idiots. They're a weapon,
right?
Because like there's no one who's willing to like criticize Disney for like just the absolute garbage that they make and for how much they've damaged the cinematic landscape, except for them. And they're actually effective. I mean, look at Solo, look at The Last Jedi. They're effective. Do I agree with their this is one of those Machiavellian things I was talking about earlier. Like, do the ends justify the means? Like, I don't know, maybe if it means saving cinema.
Right. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. And I know like people in the chat are like, oh my God, sticking up for G&G. No, I'm not. And I don't think he is either. But the idea that and it's, again, you have to question, quote unquote, your God. I'm not saying Zack is a God. I'm just utilizing.
But some people think he is.
Right. I'm just utilizing the phrase that he used himself.
Yeah.
Right. Which is, you have to challenge your gods, right? You have to challenge the things you love, et cetera, to see if they hold up and hold weight. And I do agree. When I saw that, I've never really liked that goofy ass channel, but the whole criticism that was being lobbied against him was interesting. And I was like, okay, what the fuck? And then, but I also understand why he did what he did. The way in which he did it, I don't necessarily agree, because I'm a guy, we've said this numerous times, or I've said this to you numerous times, and I've said it on the stream numerous times. I've always said, like, I don't give a damn about meeting anybody. And I've even said, I don't care about meeting Zack. I ended up having the opportunity to meet him, and I did, and it was great. We'll probably meet him again in the future. Awesome. But I always wanted to tell people that, because I wanted to make it known, you're not going to dangle a carrot over my head, right? So I think the double-edged sword of being a man like Zack Snyder and being so high on the totem pole of your big studio creativity means that it comes with certain daunting tasks. And one of those tasks may be you just got to go out there and disavow a motherfucker real quick, and because you want to save your brand, etc. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I disagree with the way in which it occurred. I think there should have been a lot more nuance and conversation to be had, because that was an opportunity to say a lot more than what was done. You know what I mean? And not to like harp on the point, but I'm just saying, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that complicated, to be honest. I think that whoever set up the arrangement should have just taken those into consideration beforehand. It's not like what G&G does, who they are associated with, what they talk about is I mean, they're literally the forefront of that and the entire anti-woke, YouTube network. Like basically everything like The Last Jedi and forward, like that was the genesis of that entire side of the internet. So to get on there and pretend, I mean, it sounds harsh, but I'm just kind of done apologizing. I'm just kind of done of it. I'm just kind of tired of it. Like whoever put that together should have known. And once you committed to that, to like break it off immediately as though you're in a dangerous situation, like, oh my goodness, like this is like I'm in the wolf's den, lion's den. Like it's not like that. I think that they're lowbrow. I think that they're, as you said, kind of Neanderthalish, and they're kind of they're grifters for sure. But I'm not like they're dangerous, inciting the blah, blah, blah. No, that's ridiculous as well. And I think that to all the theatrics that took place created enemies that you didn't need to create, for sure. And this is something that needs to be talked about and needs to be just stated and not apologized for, in my opinion.
I get what you're saying, because it could have potentially caused a schism.
It did. It did create a schism.
You know what I mean?
To this day, like those that side of the internet hates him out of principle, and many of them actually were very amenable to him.
Yep.
They were very but they hate him now out of principle, out of like this, hey, we don't like this guy, and it absolutely created a schism, 100%. And if you don't think that there are people who watch those channels, who agree with them and appreciated their criticism, however lowbrow I think it is, that also who aren't like hardcore Zack, fans who maybe are affected by that and also kind of went that direction, then you're sadly mistaken, because that's exactly what happened. They just don't. They've never been much to really talk loudly. They use those people to kind of voice their opinions, and they don't really voice their opinions that much on social media for fear of backlash.
That's why I think that a lot of the problems that he has with with fandom in general stems from America, because, and we talked about that before too behind the scenes, and I just thought about that just now, like, because you look at, like, let's say what those guys represent allegedly, right, and what the audience that they may garner, and it may just be lowbrow, traditional people with traditional values and blah blah blah, basic average stuff, right? And then you have the other side that hates him. They hate him because of, I'm just going to say, manufactured hate. I call it the blue hairs of society, right?
Yep.
So you have the side that's kind of the working class that are kind of like viewing him from that side of the conversation. They're like, oh, screw him now. And then you have the blue hairs of society that have always said screw him. And it causes this weird sort of conversation from his American audience. And then, because I do think that he obviously is successful. And I think a large part of that success stems from
his international audience.
International audience, which is largely, I want to say, untainted, man. They're not bothered by any of this shit, like all these goofy social political bullshit. They're very,
and that's the reason why their voices don't travel as far, honestly, is because it doesn't have that tinge of like the cold, I hate using these words because it's so charged, and it honestly makes you feel like you're having a conversation about something that's silly but it's just it's something that we have to deal with every day, and to pretend like it isn't there is also kind of cringe. So I'm just, I'm not really about trying to apologize for it. There's a whole culture war situation going on here, and when you kind of invoke it makes your voice travel further. Whereas a lot of the international audiences, they're not like really on that wavelength, you know?
Yeah, I get what you're saying because I was like, "Where are you going with that?" Yeah, it's like yeah, the culture war
Like the
thing.
Mary Sue just recently post.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we're dealing with. Like, and we all know it. We just don't really we treat the Mary Sue like we treat like Variety when we're talking about it, but we know that there's kind of a difference there. We just don't say
It was
anything.
it was like I was like, "Yo, man." And that's to me that's the blue hairs of the world,
Yes,
you know,
100%.
where they're gonna look at something that Zach did. They're gonna look at a trailer, and they give that much of an egregious opinion. It's like what is happening? It's not that deep. You can dislike it, but good lord. And then
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, I can't really pin down a name, but I've seen what could be described as the other side of the blue hairs, which is the opposite, the antithesis of a blue haired,
Mm-hmm.
say something not similar, but something more like almost like he's a tryhard. So I'm like, oh, well, there you have it, right? You have the he's a tryhard opinion, and then from the blue haired side, you have the oh my god, he's giving us porn. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, look at international. Brazil loves him. They love what he
India.
does. India, oh my god,
Yeah.
India,
Mm-hmm.
Japan. You
Yeah.
know, can you speak to that briefly before we
Yeah.
get
I
to our
mean,
last topic about the international appeal? We're like coming from the filter through anime, Japanese anime. What do you think? Do you think there's a correlation with that?
yeah, well, we talked about this too. So Man of Steel, right? The scene that everyone is it's an iconic scene. It's where you get a POV shot, Superman's flying in the air, he's punching Zod, he's like, ping ponging him in the air, or a paddle ball him, in the air. That shot is actually a an homage to a scene from Birdie the Mighty, right? It's an anime. Tetsuan Birdie is what it is in Japanese. And so it's very obvious, and everyone has even given a lot of lip service to how the battle at Smallville felt very anime-esque, right?
100%.
And it's because it is. Like,
Yeah.
it's very clear.
And I freaking when you told me that, I love it even more.
Yeah,
Bro.
I'll send you the anime if you want to check it out, and I'll
100%.
send you the scene too if you want to check that out. But
100%.
So I think that and honestly, that fight slapped. Like, people always said, "Man, like, imagine if he did Dragon Ball Z based on this." Like, that would be so amazing. It's like, yeah, man, it would be.
I told you behind the scenes. I said I quit all this shit, all of it. You can put me on the Zack Snyder DBZ verse. That's all I'll talk about if he ever does that. So Zach, go for it, bro. I'm with it. I'm with it.
Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't be against him making a franchise that. Oh, another thing. So this is kind of a little bit of a. No, it's not a tangent. It's actually right on point. Sucker Punch has a lot of anime vibes.
Yes. Oh, purposefully.
Yeah. I mean, it's got a lot of anime vibes. I would 100% watch a higher budget movie, kind of like Sucker Punch. It's a little bit. It's not as personal. It's not like as kind of small or contained, but it's a little bit more like Man of Steel, but with the oomph that you get from.
Yeah. Take out all of the elements of the real life elements.
Yes.
And
make the whole movie like
yes, all the fantasy stuff. Yes, I've said that for years. I've been like,
yes,
yo. And I like Sucker Punch. I really do. Like, it's not one of my favorites of his, but it's one of those I can put in and go, oh my goodness.
And you know what people love anime. People love anime. I mean, there's many reasons why people love anime, and not everyone loves it, but there's a whole different. There's a lot of different kinds of people who like anime who aren't anything alike. But I know from my side of the internet and my own personal opinion, anime is great when you want to escape the whole Hollywood thing.
Yes.
It's culturally different. The Japanese people are far more traditional. And while they don't have the same genesis that you and I do coming from the United States, from our perspective, it's absolutely, it rings more traditional, and unapologetically so. So when you watch it, it just feels like you're in a whole different world. And I think that Zack Snyder, honestly, would be able to play around in that universe with, and it would just work. It just worked really well.
Because everything he does lines up with that sort of international / anime, Japanese anime feel. Like he fits right in 100%. Masculine dude, masculine ideas, traditionalism, hot women, all that
And
jazz.
edge and genuine, actual edge. Like watch anime
Not
is
sarcasm.
actually edgy.
Yep. Yes. Yes. Not like not to pick on Deadpool and Wolverine, but not like something like a Deadpool Wolverine or even
Harley Quinn.
Yes,
Velma.
I was about to say I don't even want to pick on Deadpool and Wolverine because I'm actually going to go see that.
Like Peacemaker, Deadpool, Wolverine, Velma,
The Boys, certain seasons of The Boys.
Yes, The Boys, exactly. It's all safe. The Boys is a great example because while The Boys actually there's a lot of good stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
As far as just the actual story, like I enjoy it. Whenever it is being edgy, it's definitely within the realm of safe edge. Safe edge, 100%. But anime is not safe.
And that's why I love anime. We talked about this before, not to get into an anime tangent per se, because we got one last topic, but how when I was growing up, all I liked was, the hard shit. Give me Ninja Scroll. Give me freaking Vampire Hunter D. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't like the
Fist of the North Star.
Yeah, give me that, man. That
Dude,
was
Zack
my
Snyder
childhood.
Man,
that would be nuts. Him on Fist of the North Star.
Wow.
Well, Zack's always invoked, he, in some semblance of what he's done over the years, has always been this era of heavy metal magazine, right?
Yeah.
Which brings us to the last topic, Rebel Moon and the future of streaming and cinema, right? Man, I know you are very, 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 very you're very critical of Rebel Moon's everything about it so far, and I appreciate that. I'm more so I'm like a kid in a candy store when I see Rebel Moon.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be. You have to point me towards the negatives. You know what I mean? Like I'm just like give it to me, just inject it in my veins because I look at other franchises that I used to appreciate because I was never really a big, huge Star Wars person. Never. I always appreciated the themes more so than the actual execution.
Yes, the idea.
The ideas. That's what I meant. The ideas. Yeah.
100%.
You know what I mean? So when I hear something like any sort of science fiction, I grew up on RoboCop. I grew up on Terminator. I grew up on Aliens. So, sci-fi kid.
Definitely more adult for
for a kid. John Carpenter. All that jazz, right?
Yeah.
So when I look at Rebel Moon, I'm like, oh, this is everything I grew up on, just thrown onto the screen, and then some. And then I see this Red Band trailer. I'm like, oh my God, just give it to me, So what do you think?
It's a net positive. It's a net positive.
100% a net positive, which doesn't make any sense what I just said, but I don't care. 100% a net positive. So my question to you is like, what are your thoughts on, what this means for the future?
Yeah. Let me put it this way.
Streaming
Okay?
and cinema.
I don't like streaming. I watch things. I watch things on streaming because I have to, but it's just
full
not
disclosure.
Ideal.
I don't either. I'm a physical media guy.
Yes.
100%.
Physical media is better. I actually pre-ordered Arcane
away from controlling some shit I love, and that's the weird thought process that I have about things in life. So, anyways, go ahead, continue.
No, I pre-ordered Arcane. The G Kids just released, physical media for Arcane on from Netflix, right? So
I saw that. I thought
day
that was
one
cool.
Pre-ordered, right?
Right, just because
Steelbook, 4K Steelbook, and it's like that is. I hope that Rebel Moon gets the same treatment. that's a concern of mine, because I think cinema is important for the communal aspects. I think it's important to keep, archive it, and to have physical media, and to like own it. I think is important. I think that um, I want the artist to be put first and foremost. So while this is a compromise, yes, it's an acceptable compromise in the situation. Like, I'm happy that it's getting released, but there has been a lot of damage. Like, I actually have some friends personally, right, who I speak to on a regular basis, and we hang out usually on Fridays. They'll come over, we'll have some snacks, some drinks, we'll watch something on Netflix or watch a movie or a TV show, and we'll hang out, right? And we watched Rebel Moon, the first one. They were extremely negative about it. I was reticent. I was like, I didn't want to say anything. I personally felt like I got what their frustrations were. I got their criticisms, and I felt very conflicted because I didn't want to admit it, because they sounded just like all the people on Twitter when they hate it, right? But they don't go on Twitter, they don't go online, and yet they sounded like all the haters. So I know they were speaking genuinely. So it forced me to criticize myself. Like, every time I hear a hater, do I automatically turn them into a boogeyman that, they're just, because this is my actual friend. Like, I know, I speak to them, we hang out all the time. Okay. And that's when I realized, like, yeah, I'm chronically online, and I'm always caping for Zack Snyder, and I'm always forming the narrative that I need to reconcile my own feelings. Like, the truth is, I didn't even like it. That's just the truth. I didn't like it, and that hurts me more because I just,
I had to continue.
yeah, it hurts. It hurt me a lot, and it's funny whenever, my friends come over, they always remind me, it's like, oh yeah, I didn't like him. And actually, one of my, I sent another one of my friends the podcast where he was on Joe Rogan, right? And he actually, because I was trying to express to him, like, hey, like, this is the reason why I like Zack, right? Like, how he kind of, his philosophy on art and characters and all that. And he says, man, I hate Zack Snyder even more after listening to that. It's like, so it's just,
Damn.
Yeah, I know. I was like, so obviously we're still friends, but man, that sucks, So
I've actually had like the opposite response from people who once didn't like him. I've had this sort of, I've been able to, what's the word I'm looking for? I actually want to sound like a cultist. What's the word I'm looking for?
You want to sound like a cultist?
Yeah, I do.
He's a blueprint, activated.
No. I've been able to not get them to come over, but pretty much get them to.
Oh, inducted them. You proselytized them.
Yes, 100%. So that's interesting. Oh man, I don't know what I would do if I introduced him and his work to somebody who either didn't know about him or hated him, and just kind of reintroduce or introduce, and then they could just go, nah, he still sucks.
Or the truth is that
this guy's trash. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Never happened to me.
But the thing is that, like, I think that we all have a difficult time understanding that Zack is actually, like, his fans are actually a minority, but they just don't, like, you should be comfortable and in that reality. You shouldn't have to apologize for it, right? Like, I go out, I talk to my friends, and most of them, when I bring up certain Zack Snyder movies, a lot of times they're like, "Oh, that's Zack Snyder." They don't know, like, that all these movies that they've seen are all Zack Snyder, but they dislike Batman v Superman, and they think Sucker Punch is pretty good, and Man of Steel they didn't care for. Zack Snyder Justice League, they didn't sign up for HBO Max to watch it. Like, what I'm trying to say? Like, these are just normies, right? They don't have
right.
online. So it's like, I'm okay with being, one of the minorities. So I'm not like trying to argue on behalf of Zack's supremacy. Like, it's not gonna happen. He's always gonna probably have a smaller, more minority, but very faithful and loyal group, and that's fine.
I disagree with that his fan base is small. I think that his fan base is, if it is probably just by American standards, you know, because I think internationally he is,
Well, talk to. I mean, I don't know.
because
You
he's
brought it
had
to some people's
servers that
attention.
totally shut down internationally. You know what I'm saying? And I think that in this generation of consuming entertainment, I don't think people really praise directors too often. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'll say this too, just to give pushback, even on the American thought process. His name's been spoken about in Oscars. His name's been spoken about um, in different TV shows. His name's been so I
That's
no
impact. I mean, listen, I'm not saying that like the
sure.
problem is like it's not. I don't know. I've gotten to the point where I don't feel like I have to combine. I don't like there. I felt like I had cognitive dissonance before because I've talked to many friends, different age groups. You know, like one of my friends is
Mhm.
like in his mid 50s. You know, my other friends are like they're like in their early 20s. You know, I'm 30; they're in their early 20s. I've talked to some who are like in their teens. You know, like in groups of people. And I bring it up because I love Zack Snyder. You know, um, and a lot of them are kind of just like some of them hate them. Some think he's okay. I don't know anyone who absolutely loves them. Sometimes you get someone who like really likes one particular movie, but they don't know that he's done a bunch of other things. This is kind of like my reality. I don't know a lot of people in my actual everyday life who are just like hardcore stans.
You know what it
So,
could be too? Oh, I get what you're saying. Hardcore, the hardcore stands. Gotcha. Well, I don't know. I don't know, man. Like, I haven't really met a hardcore Quentin Tarantino person in person. You know what I mean? Hey,
I
Quentin,
mean, everyone will wax poetic about Kill Bill, or I mean, I know so many
right?
people who are so much more. I don't know a lot of people who are negative about Tarantino. Like I know a lot more people who are super positive about him, and they can say the lines and everything like that. Just like based on only anecdotal evidence only. Um, I don't know. Maybe it's I have a really bad sample
Do you
size.
think?
I don't
Do
know.
you think that that's more so because of the manufactured hatred of the guy? Because I get what you're saying about Twitter, but let me say this real quick. So if you got any social media platform that's vehemently trashing a director or anybody, and that small sample size trickles out to other people from the media, because it doesn't just stay in its own little bubble. It goes from social media, and the media push it out like THR, other platforms. Then people who may read THR go to these. You know what I mean? Like it just kind of trickles outward, and so then the understanding of this person, this individual, is quote unquote negative, and they kind of resonate the same talking points because they've been regurgitated past its ground zero point. It goes from ground zero outward.
Yeah.
So
What you're saying is that like someone could be they don't even do it often. They scroll through an article and the article just randomly mentions how Zack Snyder is a hack or something like that. They don't really think about it, but in the back of their mind, that kind of has an influence or something like that. Or someone who is very chronically online, their opinion when they're speaking to their friends, their family, or whatever, they kind of relay that opinion and it kind of poisons other people, even though they don't recognize it. So
exactly.
it has like a secondary, tertiary
So
effect, even though the people who have these opinions aren't the ones specifically who are online. I mean, yeah, it's possible.
the
I
reason I
would
say
argue
that
that
is
a lot of people
because
would try to say that, oh, in
uh
real life, people love Zach, but you know, and they would just say the
well,
opposite.
and that's the thing too. Like I'm under the I can believe and say and even agree with you and say that to say love, that's a strong word, because we don't even we're not even in the time frame that from the time he started to become infamous and or popular to now is the time frame, in my opinion, in which social interaction and the way we even view media changed. So for a guy like him, I think he is of note. I think that anybody in his era, in this generation, I don't think there are. I think there are very few names, and he's among them. I think anybody that has any sort of notoriety or any sort of attention is probably because of the projects that they're choosing more so than
Yeah.
their name. And I can't really say that about Zach. I think his name actually highlights the project, whether that be because of infamy or popularity is
Yeah.
kind of a question mark. And I can understand where you would say it's probably more so infamy than popularity, because he's not a Steven Spielberg who's made like Jurassic Park and E.T.
Well,
and shit.
here's
You know what I'm
another
saying?
anecdote. So I have a few friends who, at least like one or two friends, to be more straight, like, you know, honest about it, like straightforward,
Mm,
who they were very split on Man of Steel. They hated BVS, and they loved Zack Snyder's Justice League. Okay, and I
yeah.
talked to this one friend. He's in his 40s, and he said, and he's big into like retro video games and nerd culture and nostalgia culture and comic books and all that kind of stuff, right?
Mm,
And he said that he liked Zack Snyder's Justice League because it was more comic book. He felt like he was more hopeful and optimistic, and basically all the things that people criticize Zack Snyder for doing in his movies, he actually praised Zack Snyder's Justice League for doing it. So to me, this is how I reconcile this in my head. I'm just not really interested in trying to maintain a certain narrative in my head. Like, I'm
oh,
okay
me
with,
neither. Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It's like, it doesn't, like, even if people like it, they like it for the things that the haters say that he's doing. You know what I'm trying to say? It's like, I should
Yes.
be able to
Yes.
like something. Like, if he makes a dark, edgy, grim dark, you know, nihilistic movie, I should be able to say, you know what, I like it because it's dark, nihilistic, grim, dark, edgy, whatever. Like,
100%.
and I shouldn't have to even think a second time of it. Now, I'm not saying that's the case. There's obviously more nuance there, but you know what we're trying to do is we're trying to parse out whether the narrative is correct about Zach as far as the size of his audience, the intensity of his audience. I don't know. I just know I have like certain notions, you know. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's probably the narrative is definitely that his fans are more minute and they're just really loud. And that's obviously a mischaracterization. But
Right.
how much larger than that is, I mean, I can't really say. And I'm not that actually concerned about it, really.
Yeah. Neither am I. I just know that in these conversations, there's layers, and we're talking about the layers. So no, yeah. To your point, no, I get it. It's kind of, you're basically saying like, why give a shit and just enjoy what you enjoy, right? In a sense.
Yeah, I mean, kind of. It's just like I'm trying to find a way to make my own narrative. Like with Rebel Moon, like I didn't like the Netflix cut. That doesn't mean that I won't love the the director's cut. And I think that the way that it's been released has only solidified. So a lot of people on Twitter will say that because they hate, you can't stop it, that you shouldn't even bother trying as long as you get the product out. And I don't necessarily think that you should completely give up trying to sustain a good narrative, because just as you mentioned, like you've talked to people in real life and who didn't know about them and now they like them. It's like that can happen more. And if
Yep.
people like that, we want that. We want that. Like if you're chronically online, you'll think that you'll just kind of give up and you'd be like, oh, the only thing that matters is the online narrative. But it's like, no, it's like there are people who just subscribe to Netflix and they click on Rebel Moon. They didn't like it. They don't know who this guy is. They didn't like it. And now we have this other thumbnail that doesn't look that much different than the first one. They thought they already watched it. They really don't want to watch a longer version, quote unquote, longer version. They don't know. They didn't watch the interview. They didn't have a friend who tell them, you know, you see what I'm trying to say here? It's like, this is not good. And to try to pretend like, oh, as long as I get it, it's fine. Like, that's not, I think that's just kind of like you've thrown your hands up. You feel like,
But that's the cynical side of it.
It's very cynical.
What about the side that they actually liked it? Because there are tons of people that I know that actually liked it. Women,
Well,
actually, too.
But the thing is, okay, so if they did like it, then I also have a problem with that because
why?
Well, here's the situation, right?
Mm.
I don't like Disney. They make garbage. Okay. They neuter their director's visions. Most of it's previs. It's not cinema, right?
Right.
You have a movie that's
You're gonna make me click that
intentionally
video.
that way to a degree, and if people like that, they might like that and not the director's cut. Like, you should uphold the most authentic version. Like, I'm a cinema absolutist. Like, this is important, you know. And I think that we've kind of gotten a little Machiavellian about it, like, oh, the end justifies the means, or
for sure.
But that's actually cynical, in my opinion. I'm actually being idealistic.
Right. I'm just picking apart the notion that there was an absorbent amount of people that disliked it, and now we have to be concerned with if they're going to click on the new one. That was my only stance on that, and I don't think that, to me, that doesn't even matter, in my opinion. I don't know. To me, because you know me, I'm kind of on the other side of this thing, where not even kind of, I'm very much on the other side of this, where I think that the ends did justify the means, because at the end of the day, I think that Zack was doing what he was supposed to do, which is utilize what his brand is known for, which is the cut, right? The director's cut, the Snyder cut of a thing. And so they kind of retroactively did that with Rebel Moon. They knew what they did with the Snyder cut, which was out of his control, right? And fans came together and the ZSJL is born. I think they tried to do that with Rebel Moon. And I think that we only know the success of this or lack thereof if they fucking try. If they don't, then we're not having this conversation, right? Then we're just like,
There's
we just do
that
the
can come from this.
For sure.
I think that let's just say that the director's cut gets this massive following, and that enough people watch it, and Netflix is being good faith enough and positive and optimistic enough about his own cut that they do anything. Like, for instance, they shorten the time between, like, the next time this happens, they shorten the time between the Netflix cut and the director's cut, or they release it at the same time, or ideally they release only the director's cut, or something. Like, maybe something happens where there's a financial or a reason to believe that you can release only his cut, you can market it, and that people will watch and enjoy it, and it can be financially expedient for Netflix. That might happen. I mean, I think a lot of us have completely ousted that idea from our mind. So we actually are okay. Like, most people on Twitter are just saying, no, I recognize that this is an L. I'm going to pretend it isn't an L because, you know, that's what I have to do.
So you're talking about more so those that are saying it's an L and they're just like, that's cool. We'll just take the L for now. Because I did see Snyder fans, like hardcore Snyder fans in particular, saying they were just going to skip the first two altogether because they were pissed. And they were just like, we'll just accept it until the director's cut. And me, I was very optimistic because I look at it more from a business standpoint. I'm like, look, you know, at the end of it all, Zack is a shrewd businessman. Like, he has to be.
Well, yeah, but Zaslav is also a true businessman.
Yeah, that's a terrible comparison, but
horrible comparison. Well, it is a bad comparison, but like, we don't care about the business, really. We care about the art, and we use the business you guys to justify it.
I'm talking about I can't not, because I've always been like, even when I was a kid, I was fascinated with the behind the scenes and the machinations of it all. That's just me, right? So when I look at a thing, I'm like, what the fuck's everybody bitching about? Why is everybody crying that this man is trying to be more lucrative towards the platform that's giving him more of a license to do what he wants to do, more so than other studios have as of late, right? But I also can understand and look at the other side of the conversation and say, you know, for art's sake and for almost like a cause, right? the honor of it all, why not just release the director's cut and not call it a director's cut? I can understand both sides. I would like for both conversations to have almost equal amounts of extrapolation as opposed to one being more damning or one being more important than the
Well,
other.
let me give you the worst case scenario and the best case scenario. Okay.
Okay.
So the best case scenario, in my opinion, is that we do what we're doing now, and that people naturally go for the more authentic thing, right?
Okay.
And that garners attention, it garners the money, and it justifies the existence and the promotion and the supremacy of the director's vision instead of justifying the split up and the of the cuts and the trying to like trick people into like people just genuinely want that, right? So that's the best case scenario in my opinion. A lot of people think the best case scenario is that we keep getting handouts from Netflix basically. So we watch their thing, right? We keep watching it, putting it on a loop, watching it, talking about it, beefing it up, and then in the back end we get a handout for what we really want. And if that continues happening forever, then we're good, right? In my ideal future, both versions are put out there, but the more honest and authentic version actually gets promoted to the top. Worst case scenario is it does really bad. They continue doing what they're doing, or they don't even. I think that Zach is always going to make sure his cut gets released. So there's no worst case scenario where he doesn't release his cut, but it just gets kind of dumped on the Netflix. There's no promotion. And the narrative just continues to get worse until eventually he too is ousted from Netflix, right?
Well,
and then also it gets worse than that. But go ahead.
Well, even if it does get worse than that, here's where I gotta say, I don't know, because let me look this up real quick.
Okay.
Budget Rebel Moon. So he filmed 2 movies that became 4 for $166 million, right? It's already a success. So what you're saying retroactively is irrelevant. Not to a conversation, like we could talk about it, but for future reference, for anything that comes after Rebel Moon. But it's already out, and it's out for $166 million, and it's already garnered success.
Yes,
right.
I think that's definitely listen,
That's
I
why I
agree.
say you can't discount the business side of it at
Well,
all.
I'm not.
You know
And
what
this
I
is
mean?
the thing, right? The thing when I'm splitting hairs with this, like people, they kind of just assume that I'm just the hater, and then I'm like this. I'm no different than the guy who's just saying like, why not release it first? Da, 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 da. Well, the thing is that there is merit to what they're saying. There's parts that are wrong. There's parts that they're in very bad faith discounting because they want to spin a narrative, right? And then so we discount their whole argument because we are on the defense. And Zack Snyder fans have always been on the defense. So we have like this lone wolf, like victim mentality thing going on where we're always on the defense and we have a little cognitive dissonance. Okay. Batman v Superman, right? Was successful. Okay. But so we've kind of spun the narrative that like if the first movies make their money, then it will pay for the whole project because it was all one budget. And that's true. But I think that there's still a possibility that Netflix might look at the actual numbers, the actual watch time for the final movies. And even if they don't like say, hey, we're not going to do this anymore, they might put less and less and less priority on his version to the point where it's not even like really beneficial for him to continue his thing with Netflix, right? Because they're not putting a lot of emphasis on his actual version, and it's just getting less and less attention, right? Now that's the worst case scenario. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't either. I get what you're saying. That's like I just think that I would be more inclined to dig into that with you more. I'm not even saying stop or I don't want to. I'm saying I would be more inclined to go, oh man, and kind of join in to extrapolate that if the budget wasn't 166 million and he didn't make 4 movies. You know what I'm saying? Like that's where I'm just like,
Right, of
I
course.
can't be with you on that.
There's always
because
just studios, and Netflix is still like they're giving Zack Snyder a lot of good faith, right?
100%. Yeah.
So it's not like, but there is always a room because Netflix has made a lot of dumb decisions as well before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, like
Yeah.
I'm actually writing an article and an essay on like it's like a comprehensive essay on streaming and what it's doing to to art and all that, everything like that. But like 13 Reasons Why, right? Censored it, right?
Mhm.
Stranger Things, like reduced the amount of smoking in it because of like backlash, like
Yeah.
you
All
know,
studios do this sort of weirdo censoring of certain things, and for whatever the reason is, and then they can't even come up with a real bullet point comprehensive plan on how they're going to reach the rated R, right? They just kind of do a by committee thing, and then this one's rated R, but this one isn't. You know what I mean?
well,
So,
right. So it's like there is still room for like
mm,
right now. Like, listen, good faith is in the air, and I don't necessarily think that it's going to blow up in our face, but it's like okay, Hamada, took over hashtag and Hamada we trust, right? And we know how that turned out.
yikes.
Netflix,
There were people that
hashtag.
said that.
Yeah, it's like it's like okay.
I don't remember that.
Wait, what? Don't remember what?
Hamada we trust. Who the fuck said that?
You don't remember in Hamada we trust?
In Hamada we no. I was
Walter
never on that.
Hamada?
Yeah,
there
no,
was
I
a
know
whole
who that is. I
Yeah,
don't
so there
remember
was
that.
this big hashtag going around when he took over the reins for was it DC or Warner Brothers? I think it was Warner Brothers actually at the time. But anyway, he was like the one in charge at the time, and there was a lot of discussion about how Hamada was going to be the one to turn around and get Zack back and all that, and it didn't turn out that way. But it's just like I don't know. There's a certain amount of recency bias, and I also might be a little bit. I might be catastrophizing a little bit as well, but I really care about. I mean, and I recognize that, right?
To a degree, you are
but
for sure.
but the thing is that like no one who likes Zack Snyder genuinely is like there are people will ignore all the possibilities because they want to be optimistic and
I get what you're saying. You
Yeah.
want to have a conversation about both possibilities. I'm the type of person that like, okay, it's not even about optimism. Sure, it's that, but it's also like I'm of the like what would happen the majority of the time and what would happen the minority of the time. It's the most versus it's the on average sort of scenario versus this. So like that's why I'm not very doom and gloom about Rebel Moon and the rollout. Like my only agreement would be to say for art's sake, for the sake of the game, right? Just to be a layman, for the love of the game,
Mhm.
I wish he would have rolled out with the director's cut first for the love of the game. But because he didn't, I'm not tripping. Because for the love of the game,
Yeah.
he also said, F it. Because this vision, let's be honest, right? This shit shouldn't exist, the director's cut, at all.
Yeah.
No studio would have
that's
made
true.
this ever.
Yeah.
Warner
Yeah.
Brothers wasn't gonna make it. If they would have, it would have been some
Disney wasn't
Star
going to make
Wars.
the Disney version.
Exactly. Disney didn't want to do the Disney version. Warner Brothers didn't want to do what would have probably been called Rebel Moon of some sort. They didn't want to do that. Now we come to Netflix, and Netflix heard that he had a weirder version of this Star Wars adjacent thing.
Yeah.
So this movie, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm not speaking necessarily for the totality of the delusional side of the fans or the more optimistic side of the fans or the ones that just clap like seals. I'm not speaking for that. I'm speaking for what makes sense and
Sure.
the
There's a
business side of
rational.
things, the
There's a
rationale
rational.
of it,
Of
because
course.
the
Yeah.
rationale says for $166 million, this man just made a movie
Yeah.
that should not exist. We're going to get a heavy metal weirdo sexual alternate universe version of a film that shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. There's definitely a rational argument to be made for a certain optimism. And I don't really like. I don't know. I'm being negative. The thing is, whenever you're negative about something that someone else loves, they're gonna feel a little miffed about that, and I get it. I'm just me personally. I felt like a lot of pressure to always be positive and to be hyped about everything. And I see that everyone of every franchise, every fandom is doing the same thing. Like the Warner Brothers and DC guys or sorry, the Warner Brothers and my brain's fried. Deadpool and Wolverine guys right now are talking about, all these pretentious critics, and they're just like, going hard in the paint for their franchise, and even a lot of Snyder fans are actually doing the same thing right now because, well, some despite Warner Brothers because they feel like, for reasons that we won't go into because of spoilers and whatnot,
Right.
It's a spite for Warner Brothers, so they're gonna go watch it and they're gonna promote it and whatever. Or they just think that like Warner Brothers is doing what, or Disney's doing what Warner Brothers couldn't do, or they're pleasing their fans. They know how to create a franchise or whatever, which is all actually just they're speaking out the side of their neck. Like they're just saying that because they're emotional and they're not thinking rationally or clearly. Like Disney's fumbled the ball massively with their franchises,
100. Yeah.
and they've treated their fans terribly. So I don't know where that's coming from, but yeah, I don't know. I
get what you're saying though. It's like you kind of want to. It's almost like not that you want to do this, but it's almost like if we could just have a conversation with everybody about everything and just be like, yeah, let's just be honest and let's just have this conversation.
Yeah,
and it might get 100%. A little ugly on both sides of the conversation,
and just accept it. Like, hey, this is the reality. Like, it doesn't mean that like, oh, we're failing, everything's going to, but just like, could it have been better? Like, what is the implications of this? But
right.
It's all just hype.
Yeah, no, I get it. So I'm much more optimistic, obviously, about the future of Rebel Moon and the cinematic nature of it all. When Rebel Moon, in terms of what it means for the landscape of cinema, I think this opens up doors for greater opportunities and greater risk. And I say that because at the end of the day, there aren't any, and I get it. Before I get my thought completely out, Netflix, the biggest flaw they have among their flaws is the physical media aspect. Totally understand that.
Theatrical
totally
is second, probably.
Yes, the lack of theatrical rollout and the way that people are made to view certain things, by phone, by tablet, etc. We can lump that all into negatives, right? Even though those are negatives, they're still kicking every studio's ass, in America at least, when it comes to risk. They're more risky, they're more daring, and they're more willing to take a guy with a vision and give him some runway to take flight.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
I cannot help but just look at Rebel Moon and the future of streaming and cinema and just kind of have that optimism,
Yeah, and I agree. All of this is really just a tone thing. Like, I'm not really expressing the positives because I feel like right at this time, for me to be wary, to be like conservative about kind of the narrative that I'm spinning and how I'm framing everything is more important than just being like, oh, this is a celebration and let's just kind of do a victory lap. Like, so it's just a tone thing. Like, I totally agree with you. Like, this is unprecedented. It's amazing from a financial standpoint, from an artistic standpoint, from a narrative standpoint, just pushing the media forward. It's risky. Netflix is doing a great thing. Like, they should be applauded for this. Zack Snyder's doing his thing. This was like very clever of them to pull together. So all those things are true. It's just like the fact that I'm even giving any lip service to some of the concerns, the worries or anything like that. It's just a tone problem. And it's going to come off a little uncouth, I guess, but I don't know what to do about that.
No, it's cool. And I'm actually, this is why I brought you here, because I didn't want you up here doing this essentially, right?
Surprise for you.
Music make you lose control. Music make you lose control.
Oh no.
Because twerking can get you hurt, right? But
Yes.
no, I'm glad you were up here as a bit of a foil, right? A bit of a other side of the coin, and it draws out these sort of conversations because I could have been up here with, someone who's like a zealot in regards to all of this, and maybe an interesting conversation.
It probably wouldn't have lasted very long.
Right. And I wanted to talk about these things to really get these narratives out there and really pick them apart and do exactly what Zach said. You got to challenge your gods, you got to, and see if they hold up. And I think they did, because as Zach says,
Wake the fuck up.
you know what I'm saying? So with that being said, Mike, it was a pleasure, brother. We got to do this again very soon. I know we talked about a couple of things to do that we're probably cooking up in the works behind the scenes.
You have to promise me one thing, though.
Absolutely. What's up, man?
Yeah. Next time, I won't be the bad guy.
I don't know, man. I kind of like it.
Yeah. You like the moral superiority, huh?
Damn right, it's my channel. But no, I'm just kidding. No, you were dope, man. You were dope. I know there were some people in the audience were like, coming for your neck, man. Let me highlight a couple of those.
I mean, hey, you can come for my neck on Twitter,
Where's he at? He said, the homie Michael said,
catch me outside.
This dude's a very proverbial Debbie Downer. You know what I mean? So, hey, I get it, man. I get it. Passionate fans, passionate opinions, and I appreciate at least you're thought provoking. You're not just someone who's like a G&G just up here beating your chest, being a Neanderthal and just cussing and fussing and foaming at the mouth. You know what I mean?
I try.
Yeah, nah, man, it's effortless, bro. Stop it. It's effortless. But I appreciate the chat. Everybody showing up. Everybody head on over to Zod Rider's channel. He's interviewing the Great Skywalker. I'm going to head over there next. I did not mean to overlap on them. I just wanted to do this real quick because I've been trying to figure out a time frame and a day. But yeah, this was great. Mike, you were a pleasure. Where can the people find you, man?
You can find me at Twitter at the Exiles Net. The Exiles, that's plural, net. You can find me on Discord at the Exiles Network Discord channel. You can find me on, and I'll make a post on Twitter so you guys can find me, or like a comment on the.
I could actually put it in the comments here. Let me see. So you said at the Exiles.
Let's see here. Okay, yeah, I can like send you a. There you go.
Excellent. Okay,
the reasons I'm broke. Discord channel. Also, that's Dan from the Reason I Broke podcast, and me and him do a lot of projects together, and we hang out and talk a lot. And yeah, that's Substack. So my Substack is gonna be Substack.com at Millennial Mike is where you can find me, or I believe you can also go millennialmike.substack.com. I think.
Did you put it in the back?
Let's see here. There you go. So yeah, that's those are my socials.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I had an absolute blast being on, and
yeah, this was dope.
We'll stay familiar. Dope. We'll stay familiar.
Of course. Of course. I know me and you will. I know some people probably want to fight you.
Yeah. No, I definitely, DMs, for sure. Of course, when I'm praising Rebel Moon, the director's cut, they won't be fighting me. They won't be fighting me then.
Exactly. They're gonna leave you alone then. Well, everybody, this
until they
was a
slink off back
blast.
to their caves until the to come and to come and attack me the next opportune time. I'm joking. You guys, if you're listening to this, I love you. You're cool. We're all friends. It's all good fun.
Yeah, Mike's not really. He doesn't give a shit. He's just joking around. Like at the end of the day,
He's not right.
yeah, he does not care.
Why you trail off, man? Save your whole chest.
No, for real, you don't give a fuck. That's what I like about you. Like you don't care, and you were a necessary quote unquote evil for this conversation because it's a it can be a hard conversation. You know what I mean? But nah, this was dope, and cheers to many more. And Mama Bear. I will bid you guys adieu until next time.